Chapter 2890. Getting drunk. It had been days since she last tasted some wine, so she became immediately hooked to the delicious scent. With a quick gulp, she downed another mouthful of wine. The taste still lingered on the tip of her tongue as she spoke. It tastes quite mild. It seems she actually preferred a stronger wine. Then, this is the wine for you. The aftertaste is very strong. Difui smilingly answered as he passed her another bottle. They sat across the table and started drinking delightfully. Gu Shijio had never thought that they could live in peace with one another someday. His attitude of late had become less provoking. There was less arguing and more caring for one another. In fact, whenever he had the time, he would even take her out for a walk around the Devil Kingdom. He reasoned that they needed to show their affection publicly to make it more convincing. Contrary to what she expected, Gu Shijio actually found those days quite enjoyable. Sometimes, she wished that it would never end. Besides enjoying good food and walks around the Devil Kingdom, Gu Shijio was also collecting spiritual stones around the place. Passerbys would typically only admire the clarity of the stones. However, Gu Shijio was perhaps one of the few people who knew that the stones were essential elements that provided spiritual energy to the heavens and earth. Furthermore, these stones were the sole element required on a star formation. Soon, she would have to teach Fan Xianxue the real technique to build a proper and stable formation. In order to fully understand the technique of a star formation, he had to put his heart at ease without the slightest distraction. Otherwise, the entire endeavor would fail. Over the past few days, Difui was quite occupied with his own schedule. So whenever he was busy, Gu Shijio would head out to collect the spiritual stones on her own. It was a rather exhausting process, so she could only collect 30 pieces at a time. Nevertheless, she estimated that she only needed a total of 360 pieces, so there was no rush. They had been in the Devil Kingdom for almost a fortnight now, and those were fruitful days. For the first time, she actually felt contented and fulfilled. Difui would make an effort to come back and have a meal with her during lunch. Sometimes they would have the meal in their room, and other times in a restaurant. Every outing together was a great way to get more people aware of their relationship. Gu Shijio was impressed by Difui's professionalism in the matter. Everything that he did was done with a proper plan. She thought about all this while drinking wine with Difui. Getting tipsy was the best part about drinking. Satisfied, Gu Shijio could already feel the wine in her head. She then threw the voice recording amulet to him and said, "Here, a surprise for you." Difui switched it on and listened to everything on the tape. "Did you venture into the regent's residence all alone? His place is heavily guarded with many array formations." With a smile, Gu Shijio proudly replied, "There is nothing that can stop me from entering. There is also no place that I cannot go. Don't worry, I went in and out unnoticed. Your plan still remains intact." "I'm not worried about my plan. I am worried about your safety." Gu Shijio laughed out loud. "You're being silly. You should also know that I am the Divine Lord. Do you really think that I am that fragile? Moreover, you have done a great deal for me, so I really should repay your kindness." She was right. Gu Shijio was the Divine Lord, after all. She was not like any other woman. In fact, she was even more powerful than him. He was indeed overworried. Perhaps he had seen her at her worst times, thus giving him an idea to be protective of her. He felt an intuitive need to make sure that she was safe. Her blushing cheeks seemed to have caught his attention at this time. The look in her eyes was a little blank, as she was probably tipsy. Nevertheless, Difui found it extremely captivating. All of a sudden, he could feel a rush of blood in his chest, so he quickly looked away. "I do not need any form of repayment. All right, the wine will get a little stronger over time. You should stay here and rest." Apparently, Gu Shijio was very obedient when she was tipsy this time. Chapter 2891. Getting drunk, too. As she tried to get up, she accidentally brushed her head against his hand, and unfortunately, she started swaying and fell right into Difui's arms. For a moment, Gu Shijio lay helplessly in his embrace. She shook her head real quick before looking up and staring at him. Their eyes met, and he looked at her with an intense gaze. It was clear that he had become captivated. As they continued to stare into each other's eyes, It was as though they were looking into each other's souls. At this point, Guzigia's breath smelled of the wine that they had shared, coupled with a small fraction of her own sweet scent. Difui could feel the blood rushing through his head, reminding him of a strong urge that led to the most honest bodily reaction of a man. In an instant, he felt the need to take her to the bed. "Little Fui, you are so good-looking," Gushijio commented while stroking his face with both her hands. The sudden gesture dumbfounded Difui. Delighted, he then returned the comment with a smile and said, "You are welcome to take a few more looks. Your face will surely attract a lot of women. I wish I could put a mask on your face so that no one else gets to see it." Gushijio slowly traced his supple skin with her fingers. Her soft hand slowly caressed his cheek, sending tickles down his spine. Difui acknowledged her concern with a bright smile. "From now on, I will wear a mask in public. You're the only one who gets to see my face. All right?" "Great." Gushijio nodded at the suggestion. Unnecessary attention only brings trouble. "I think so, too. All right. I have decided to wear a mask from now on and take it off only when I am home." It seemed that the high alcohol level in her body was finally taking over her head. Guzigia's body went weak, and she appeared to be completely learning on him now. Suddenly, he could hear her mumbling to herself, "Why is the world spinning? The ground has become so soft. Is there another catastrophe?" Surprised by her sudden remark, Difui knew it was time to put her to bed. "The world is not spinning. You are drunk." He carried her onto the bed and tucked her nicely into the comfortable sheets. However, she felt that it was too warm and immediately kicked the sheets away. Difui tried to put the sheets back on her a few times, but she kicked the sheets away just the same. The Devil Kingdom's weather was usually quite chilly, so he needed to make sure that she was warm enough. He put the sheets on for the last time and cast a spell to make her stay comfy. Finally, she stopped moving and drifted into slumber right away. After sending her to bed, Difui felt the need to get a refreshing drink. He poured out a cup of water and downed it in one shot. Soon, he felt better. For the past couple of days, both of them had been sharing the same room, but slept on different beds. He did not agree to split the beds because he was trying to behave like a gentleman. In fact, he only agreed to it because he did not want to taint her name. He was a man who sought perfection and wanted to keep the most romantic part of their relationship for their wedding night. Besides, it was not their first time sharing a room. They used to stay together in the same ice house back in the glacier, but it was nothing more than sharing a space for meditation. However, something had changed over the past couple of days. Difui was feeling something more for her. Sometimes, he would spend his sleepless night looking at the woman who was soundly asleep on the other bed, immersing himself in the sweet scent of hers. Watching her sleeping had sparked some excitement in his heart. Seeing how things were going now, he made a hiss and decided that he had to leave. He walked out of the room and requested for some soup to sober up. Although the after effect was strong, the wine was a quality one. Therefore, getting drunk from the wine would not do any harm to Guzigia's body. Difui wanted for her to rest well, so he only returned 2 hours later to check on her. Chapter 2892, Getting Drunk, 3. He entered the room with the soup, but as soon as he saw her, his heart began to thump. She was still sleeping with the sheets kicked aside. She must have countered the spell during her sleep. Perhaps she really found it too warm. In fact, she did not only kick the sheets away but had even unbuttoned her clothes, thus revealing her chest. Also, for some reason, she was no longer wearing her pants. Her long, slender legs were exposed as she slept. Difui had never seen anything quite as fascinating in his life. It had taken him 2 hours just to calm down earlier, but seeing her immediately made his blood boil again with lust. His throat started to itch too, as if thirsty for something more. Meanwhile, the excitement in his lower body was hard to ignore. With a deep breath, he tried to discipline himself. Throughout Difui's life, he had chosen to meditate at a more divine level, which required him to get rid of his emotions, be it love or lust. Therefore, the man was hardly interested in anyone, except for her. It was as though she had awakened a beast in him, which he needed to control at all times. He generally controlled himself all this while, but this time was slightly different. The thirst in his throat had been around long enough. Watching her sleep this way had triggered a burning desire that took over his body almost instantly. He was now like a reckless adolescent who was going through puberty. Quickly, Difui cast a spell, summoning the sheets to cover her up again. Soon enough, there was nothing left to see. Only then did he approach her. "Shijio, have some soup for you." Deep in her sleep, Gushijio remained motionless. She looked beautiful with a hint of pink around both her cheeks. Her half-closed lips were rather enticing too. At this point, Difui felt like leaning in and kissing her. Even though she was covered in the sheets, the man was still longing for her. The look in his eyes was no longer calm like before. Tightly, he squeezed a bowl of soup in his hand. There was lust boiling wildly in his blood now. He knew that he wanted her, all of her. However, the very last bit of his senses held him back. "No, Fui," Gushijio suddenly murmured in her sleep. With her eyes closed, she reached out her arms to him, as if asking for a hug. Difui was carried away completely, and his desire triumphed in the end. He bent down to kiss her, and their lips almost touched. All of a sudden, Gushijio opened her eyes and stared at him. That was when Difui stopped moving another inch. He could tell from the blurry look in her eyes that she had just woken up and was apparently shocked at their proximity to one another. "What are you doing?" Intuitively, she shoved him aside. Difui took a huge step back, and the soup in his hand almost spilled to the ground. As Gushijio abruptly got up from her slumber, she could finally see the bowl in his hand and slowly put the pieces together. "Oh, you are here to deliver the soup. I thought." She was still trying to find her words. The unpleasant encounter with her disciple had certainly scarred her, so she thought that Difui was going to kiss her as well. Luckily, it was only a push. She would be so embarrassed if she struck him for nothing. "I can have it." She sat right up and reached out to him to ask for the soup. The ache in her head was slightly annoying, so it was definitely helpful to have some soup to sober herself up. What a sweet gesture, she thought. In fact, she was moved by his thoughtfulness. She reached out for the bowl, and their fingers accidentally touched. Bang! The bowl slipped right through his fingers. Gushijio did not understand what had happened. Why did he take his hand away so hurriedly? Also, the man's fingers were rather warm, and he looked somewhat agitated. Gushijio had never seen him in such a state before. Chapter 2893. Aren't you going to blame me? He was obviously behaving guilty, but for nothing. Why didn't you hold it nicely? It is all right. I will ask them to make another. Difui uttered before quickly attempting to leave. Hold on, Gushijio said while pulling his sleeves. Difui froze. Shocked, he turned around and saw Gushijio standing next to him. She nestled up against him, and their faces were, again, in close proximity. He could already feel her breath of warm air against his cheeks. Could she be throwing herself at him? Perhaps she also felt the same about him. After all, it was his name that she uttered, even in her sleep. The sight of her being so close to him had left him breathless. He began palpitating with excitement as he asked, What is the matter? She was standing so close to him right now, so close that all it took was a slight shift for his lips to meet hers. The rush of blood was blurring out his senses again, and he was about to give in to his lustful desires. There was no time for him to assess the situation carefully. Instead, he gave her a forceful pull and held her tightly in a warm embrace. He secured his arms around her small waist before he dived for her lips. Unfortunately, their lips never touched. All he could feel was one of her fingertips. She was pointing her finger at him, and he had not seen it coming. He somehow put his lips on her finger instead. Dumbfounded, he stopped moving. Quickly, Gushijio pulled her finger away from his lips. With a sniff, she could already tell that something was not right. You are poisoned. He was still clasping her in his arms when she told him. But as soon as she made the observation, she gave his body a few quick touches to fix some acupuncture points. Soon, the boiling desire in his body ceased, and his senses returned. He took a hurried step back and said hoarsely, Hey, you are poisoned. She pointed a finger at him to direct his attention. She looked at him fixedly before making a thorough explanation. Your eyes are slightly tinged with blood. Though it is a normal sign of excitement, The white parts of your eyes are also tinted with a slight shade of blue, which should not be happening. Your irises look different as well, and so do your lips. They are glowing faintly. She continued to list a series of differences. This is a sign that you have been poisoned with a love filter, she finally concluded. Difui was at a loss for words. He looked at her apologetically and asked with a voice full of guilt, "Aren't you going to blame me? Why should I blame you? You were poisoned, which is why you lost control of yourself. Don't worry. I know how to fix it," Gu Shijiu comforted. Difui looked quite disappointed. As soon as his senses returned, he immediately realized that the poison in his body was already intercepted and cut off from his bloodstream, thanks to Gu Shijiu. It did not take long for him to be convinced that he was, indeed, poisoned. He would surely find a culprit later. But meanwhile, he was somewhat disappointed by the way Gu Shijiu remained so calm about his condition. She hardly expressed any sort of emotion. Perhaps the only reason she got so close to him in the first place was to examine his condition. The poison in his body was still taking effect, though less aggressively. However, he no longer felt the same passion for Gu Shijiu as before. "Would you do the same to another man?" he asked icily. Gu Shijiu looked at him rather confusedly. "I would do the same. Should I stand aside and watch a man as he embarrasses himself? Moreover, we are partners. I am bound by duty to help you. Besides, after everything that you have done for me, it is the least that I could do." Difui took a moment to think about what she said. Then, as he studied her posture, he asked, "Are you going to treat my symptoms looking like this?" Chapter 2894. Aren't you going to blame me? To like this? Like what? Gu Shijiu looked at herself, only to realize that she was not appropriately dressed. Her clothes were still unbuttoned, and she was not even wearing pants. Her cheeks started to blush crimson. Hastily, she tidied up her clothes and felt so embarrassed. She should have foreseen the misbehavior coming when she got drunk. The whole bed would usually be a mess. Very often, she would kick the sheets away because it would be too warm, which was the same thing that she would do to her clothes. Gu Shijiu normally drank alone, so it was not a problem until now. Gu Shijiu knew that she was good at holding her liquor. She thought that it would be easy to stay in control, but did not realize that the aftereffect of the alcohol was much stronger than she expected. Had the alcohol become stronger, or had her body become weaker? Anyway, there was no time to sort out that problem now. She needed to help Difui first, so she quickly made herself appropriate. Meanwhile, Difui took the time to start meditating. He sat with his legs crossed, completely at peace. After a while, he opened his eyes, only to reveal his confusion on matter. He had a unique physique that would usually shield him from the harm of most poisons. Even when he was unfortunately poisoned, a simple session of meditation was already enough for him to extract all the toxins from his body. This time, the meditation did not help him at all. He could tell that the toxins still lingered in his system. His throat started to itch again, which was a sign that the symptoms were returning. The poison was truly one of a kind. Gu Shijiu also noticed the strength of it and realized that she could help him recover. "Let me help," she offered. As an experienced doctor, she was confident that there was nothing she could not solve. She suspected that the love filter should only be a small matter. "What is your plan?" Difui stared at her with honest bafflement as he asked. The fiery look in his eyes was hard to ignore. Gu Shijiu gave him a few gentle taps on the shoulder and said, "Don't worry. I have my own ways." She then dived straight into the treatment. Difui could feel his body temperature rising rapidly. His eyes were once again tinged with blood. He tried very hard to stay calm, though the fierce desire had long clouded his senses. Gu Shijiu had seen people being poisoned by the love filter. They became madmen who targeted any woman in sight. There was nothing that could stop them. Apparently, Difui was in a fight with himself, but he managed to keep calm so far. The young man's patience was impressive, and Gu Shijiu liked that about him. She continued to try a few ways to cure the poison, but all attempts were in vain. Troubled, she frowned at him. It was very rare for her to find a poison that she could not cure. Could it be a new type of poison? Although it was her first encounter with the poison, She felt like she had actually seen it somewhere, as she found one of the materials used in the making of the poison rather familiar. Unfortunately, she was now certain that nothing in her storage bag could be the cure. Therefore, the only way to help Di Fui was to refine the cure on the spot. Fortunately, she had brought enough items with her. As soon as she gathered all the ingredients she needed, she immediately began the alchemy. As she worked, the love filter had started to spread across Di Fui's body. Sweat could be seen rolling down all around his body, yet they soon evaporated because of his dry, hot skin. Fortunately for him, it did not take long for Gu Shijio to produce a new cure. "Here, try this," she offered. Di Fui swallowed the pill as a whole without any delay. Gu Shijio continued to observe him and soon realized that the redness on his cheeks started to fade. In fact, his complexion was slowly returning to normal. She then took a reading on his wrist and noticed that his thumping heart was already slowing down. Relieved, the woman was once again convinced that there was nothing she could not solve. "Joe, if the toxins could not be cured, what would you have done?" Di Fui suddenly asked. "Are you doubting my abilities?" "Don't worry. There is no poison that I cannot cure," Gu Shijio reassured. Chapter 2895. Aren't you going to blame me? 3. I was asking you hypothetically. Gu Shijio paused for a moment to think about the weird question that Di Fui was asking. Before she could say anything, Di Fui added, "Would you watch as my body exploded and rot?" To which she answered right away, "Of course not." "Then, what would you have done?" he quickly asked. Gu Shijio felt quite embarrassed to answer the question, so she shrugged a little and tried to answer casually. "I would find you a lady?" Di Fui's face immediately sank. "Don't worry. I know you're picky when it comes to cleanliness. Most girls will not even be on your list. I need to find you a good lady from a nice family." "So, you're telling me that I should exploit the lady?" "It is not exploitation, is it? Many ladies are obsessed with you. They have been waiting outside this building for you every single day. We can easily get one of them to help." Di Fui was even more disappointed. What should I do after the urge disappears? Ignore her when her duty is done? Gu Shijio paused to think about it. "Of course not. You have to marry her." "Didn't you tell me that I'm not allowed to have a concubine once we are married?" Gu Shijio sighed. "Formally, you're not allowed to, but all she needs to do is to wait for 3 years. Our marriage will be dissolved by then, so you can make her your concubine or even your wife, for all I care. If she thinks that the wait is too long, fine, we can sort out our priorities. You can marry her first once her duty is done, since our wedding will not take place until 20 days later. At least people will have nothing to say about her." Gu Shijio was rather generous. In fact, she felt that it was unfair for the lady to be withheld from compensation after she had done her duty. Overall, Gu Shijio was somewhat satisfied with her answer, so she thought that he would be impressed. To her dismay, his facial expression changed to a look of utter disappointment. She could tell from his eyes that he was somewhat irritated. "You are unusually generous." He threw her a sarcastic reply before walking away. Gu Shijio was surprised by the sudden change. She followed him and asked, "Where are you going?" As she was not sure if the toxins in his body had been completely extracted, she still wanted to observe him. "To find me a nice lady," Di Fui scornfully replied. He then walked faster and left her behind. Gu Shijio did not understand his irritation. Had she said something wrong? She graciously changed their entire plan, all for his sake. What more could he ask for? From the way he threw his tantrum, she assumed that the toxins were already removed. She also suspected that his remark about finding a new lady was untrue. But for the next 2 days, Di Fui never showed up once. He seemed quite occupied. He did not come back during the day, or even after work. She asked the servant about his whereabouts, but he was equally uninformed. Nevertheless, what Gu Shijio noticed was the absence of another servant. There was supposed to be 2 of them. The missing one was supposed to be in charge of the chores, so Gu Shijio was quite concerned about his safety. She asked his companion where the servant might be, and she was told that Di Fui took him away. Perhaps Di Fui needed the servant to be by his side at all times. In other news, something shocking had happened recently. The Devil King was assassinated which Gu Shijio had seen coming for quite some time. Therefore, the parlous state of the Devil Kingdom continued to deteriorate. The entire kingdom was determined to catch the criminal. However, Gu Shijio remained unbothered. She stuck to her daily routine, which was to collect the spiritual stones. Without Di Fui, there was no need for her to put on a show. On the third day, she left her room and did not come back. She had to travel far to get to a hill where there were more spiritual stones were available. Since dusk was already falling, she decided to stay the night. Chapter 2896. A coincidence. The hill was quite a distance away from the city. At night, she counted what she had collected after an entire day and realized that she was short of 20 pieces. She needed just one day more to harvest the rest. Therefore, she decided to save the hassle of traveling back and forth and stay the night. The hill that had numerous spiritual stones was one of the very few places in the Devil Kingdom that she could see the full moon. It was the time of the month where the whole disk of the moon was illuminated. The sky could be seen scattered with white clouds. Gu Shijio slowly massaged her aching wrist, which was sore from a full day of work. The full moon was too beautiful to be missed, so she decided to sit on a rock and watch the moon. The place was quiet since some ferocious beasts inhabited the hill, which managed to keep most people away. Besides, the spiritual stones had no value to the people in the Devil Kingdom, so not many bothered to come. Therefore, she could spend her time alone and undisturbed. Her kung fu was powerful enough to keep her safe from the ferocious beasts. In fact, a simple wizardry barrier was enough to keep her safe. There was nothing that she needed to worry about. Furthermore, since she was quite tired from a long day of work, she soon dozed off by the stone. Surprisingly, she could hear someone talking nearby. "National Master, this is the most beautiful place in all of the Devil Kingdom. Isn't it nice?" A clear and melodious was heard. It was the voice of the little princess. "It's not bad," Di Fui casually answered. All of a sudden, Gu Shijio became wide awake. She looked around and saw the duo from afar. Di Fui and the little princess, Meng Luqing, were strolling side by side. Unfortunately, the wizardry barrier that Gu Shijio had set up could only keep the beasts away, but could hide her from the pair. It did not take long for them to realize she was there. The little princess looked surprised. "Isn't she Miss Jio?" She could see Di Fui's deep eyes under the moonlight as he asked, "Are you spending the night here?" He took a moment to study her. Gu Shijio brushed the grass away from her dress before standing up. "I need to come again tomorrow, so I thought I might as well stay here." She locked her gaze on the duo and recalled Di Fui's last words to her. He said he was going to find a lady. Was the little princess the one for him? Gu Shijio was confident that the toxins had been removed from his body. Therefore, there was no need for him to find another woman. Meanwhile, the little princess could not keep her eyes off from Gu Shijio. Unsteadily, she stumbled and fell into Di Fui's arms. "Be careful," he said while helping her up. The little princess could be seen blushing. "I will be more careful." "Whatever you say," she answered with a nod. She then gave Gu Shijio a quick look, as if showing off. "National Master, why don't we take a walk over there? It is a good spot to watch the moon," the little princess swiftly suggested. "Sure." Di Fui seemed to be in a good mood. Quickly, they walked away together. Puzzled, Gu Shijio sat back down on the rock and gave her temples a good rub. Di Fui had been acting rather cold and reserved. Perhaps he was still mad at her. She should talk to him tomorrow when her work was all done. It had been a very long day for her, so she needed to rest for the time being. A good night's sleep was all she needed, as there was plenty of hard work to do in the morning. Quickly, she closed her eyes. But soon, she realized that she could no longer sleep. It was rather noisy at the other end of the hill. Gu Shijio never knew that the little princess could be so talkative and vivacious. She certainly had an arsenal of dramatic expressions to showcase. "Wow, it is so beautiful. This is really the most beautiful place." Chapter 2897. The dissolution of their engagement. "National Master, you are so thoughtful for bringing these snacks along. They are so delicious. Ah, there's also wine." This is awesome. The dramatic expressions went on and on. It was a lot of noise. With a sigh, Gu Shijio cast a spell to make the barriers soundproof. Finally, peace returned, but it did not take long for her to become distracted by the smell of good food. All of a sudden, Gu Shijio opened her eyes widely. She could tell from the smell of the food that it was her favorite cookie made with a passion fruit. Most importantly, it was from Restaurant Baoyan. Restaurant Baoyan was very well known for its excellent cookies. One try was enough for Gu Shijio to become hooked. However, the number of cookies available was very limited. Only a small amount was produced each day. There was no guarantee that one could buy the cookies even if they joined the queue early. Di Fui once promised that he would buy her some cookies from there. But when he finally bought them, they were not for her. Gu Shijio took a quick look and saw the cookies that were placed neatly before them as the duo enjoyed their glasses of wine. Since she could only see Di Fui's back, there was no way she could see his expression. But from the look of the little prince's happy face, she seemed to be genuinely having a great time. All of a sudden, the little princess caught Gu Zijia's curious eyes, so she turned around and said something to Di Fui. Thanks for the soundproof wizardry barrier. Gu Zijia cowled, not hear anything she said, but she could read her lips. We cannot finish these snacks, anyway. Should we send your fiancé a few pieces? Di Fui said something in return, which prompted the little princess to reply, never mind then. Even without hearing what Di Fui said, Gu Shijio already knew that he would reject the idea. Frankly, she was quite disappointed by it. As her fiancé, it was not appropriate for him to just leave her aside and spend his time with someone else. Perhaps he was reluctant to keep the show going. But if that were the case, should the wedding be carried on as planned? Gu Shijio thought that it might make sense for her to start looking for someone else. Fortunately, the news about her wedding was not widespread. Otherwise, she would be so embarrassed if no groom showed up at the wedding. Imagine if the creator of the universe were to stand there alone and marry no one. In an attempt to resolve the matter quickly, she wondered if Injusi would agree to her request again, but she suspected that he would not entertain it. Injusi had been avoiding her these days, so it was very unlikely that he would put himself in such a vulnerable situation with her again. As it was rather difficult to find a suitable candidate, Gu Shijio could not help but feel annoyed at the sudden change. She took another look at the cookies and saw that only a few pieces remained. Apparently, the little princess had savored almost everything. Frustrated, Gu Shijio closed her eyes and sighed. Her love for food was very apparent, especially when the food was fresh. There was always some food in her bag, but not much was left this time since she had been away for so long. After a long day of harvesting the spiritual stones, she had actually finished what was left. Ever since she caught a whiff of the smell of the cookies, her stomach had been rumbling a little. Nevertheless, her exhaustion soon overcame her hunger. She closed her eyes and sealed the barrier from the scent as well. When there was no distraction, she soon fell asleep. After resting for some time, Gu Shijio suddenly woke up and realized that the moon was still well lit, along with many stars that twinkled across the entire night sky. There was no one there at the other end of the hill. They were long gone. There was only midnight serenity that surrounded the hill. Chapter 2898. The Dissolution of Their Engagement. 2. Gu Shijio was surprised that her exhaustion did not get her through a good night's sleep. After a few twists and turns, she still could not fall back to sleep. She uncurled her body with a wide stretch and sat right up. Maybe it was time to give Di Fui a call. Although the man would probably be asleep, she could not resist giving him a call. There were things that she needed to talk to him about. It only took a second for Di Fui to pick up the call. What is the matter? His voice sounded a little hoarse like he had just woken up. Fui, do you regret your decision? Gu Shijio hesitantly asked. Regret what decision? Regret putting on a show with me. So what if I do? And what if I don't? Di Fui answered somewhat ambiguously. The way he answered made her assume that he must have regretted it. She knew that it was coming all along. With a sigh, she realized that she would rather trouble someone else, as she still owed Di Fui a debt of gratitude. She did not want to burden him with this matter anymore and should offer him a way out. Let's cancel the wedding. Difui took a moment to absorb her sudden request. Why? He asked in a light tone, as if not believing Gu Shijio really wanted to go through with it. Gu Shijio tried to sound as reasonable as possible. As I said, you are not allowed to marry another woman in the first 3 years of our marriage. Our reputation may be at stake when there are gossips. Now that you have already found the princess, I want you to have your freedom to love her. Luckily, my identity is still a well-kept secret, so no one knows who I really am. Even if the wedding is canceled, most people will not even notice. So you and the princess, are you jealous? Difui suddenly interrupted. Jealous? Gu Shijio laughed at the silliness. No, honestly. She gave him a short pause before resuming calmly. All right, that is it. I will find someone else to keep the show going. Are you angry? Amused, Gu Shijio laughed out loud. I am not. Don't worry. I can never be angry with you. After all, you are not obliged to help me. Even without the wedding, you will still be a friend of mine. It was yet another specimen of her great generosity towards Difui. Difui did not finish his sentence before the call was ended. Just like that, everything was said and done. There was no need for any further entanglement. Relieved, Gu Shijio decided to stretch to get ready for another day of work. If she cannot sleep, she might as well get down to work. When all of the spiritual stones were collected, her mission would be deemed complete. She would then be free to leave the Devil Kingdom since she was no longer needed here. She disengaged the wizardry barrier and started walking towards one of the many stones scattered around the hill. From a distance, she started casting a spell. However, next to the stone that she laid on, sudden wisps of red smoke rose into the air and transformed into a giant fist. Aggressively, it started attacking her. Startled, Gu Shijio took a huge leap to the back from the boulder. She was at least 10 feet away. Therefore, the red fist missed her. With a quick sway, it slowly gathered and transformed into the shape of a man. The young man in red stood proudly before her. He looked at her with his sharp eyes, but a mark on his forehead was his most prominent feature. His red, supple lips glistened under the moonlight, which greatly complemented his big, red robes. There he stood, looking as graceful as ever. Gu Shijio realized that his eyes were dark emerald as he fixedly stared at her, as if inviting her to fight. Chapter 2899. The Dissolution of Their Engagement. 3. Miss Gio, your kung fu is impressive, the man spoke in an alluring tone. Gu Shijio was impressed by the man's kung fu as well. If her power were any weaker, she would already have been crushed. Meanwhile, from the intensity of the strike, she could safely conclude that the man was a great devil. A great devil of the Devil Kingdom was equivalent to a great deity in the outside world, which was certainly a rarity. There were many great talents and strange people that Gu Shijio had encountered in her lifetime. She knew that there were only 2 prominent great devils. The first one was the regent, and the second was his son, Meng Wuya. His son was always traveling the world, so he had not spent a lot of time in the Devil Kingdom. It seemed that he was disinterested in his father's political game, so no one paid much attention to him. All Gu Shijio knew about him was his existence. Nevertheless, as soon as he made his move, Gu Shijio could immediately recognize him. Meng Wuya, the man did not deny it. It seems you do know a lot of people. He took a step forward, with his eyes still locked intently at her. Miss Gio, would you come with me? He tried to make himself sound as inviting as possible. In fact, his eyes were somewhat seducing her to follow him. Actually, he was using the bewitching spell, which was quite a move to use for a first encounter. Soon, Gu Shijio found herself caught in his eyes. Quickly, she started to lose her balance and stared back at him blankly. Repeatedly, she answered, I will follow you. Smilingly, Meng Wuya seemed satisfied with the result. The mark on his forehead was blinking with a faint light now as he said, That is right. Come with me, and I shall treat you well. He waved his hand at her and released an intensely fragrant smell. Meanwhile, Gu Shijio started swaying on her feet before eventually collapsing into the man's arms. Meng Wuya looked down at the woman in his embrace and asked, Miss Gio, Do you think I am beautiful? Yes, you are as beautiful as a blossoming flower. Meng Huiya was happy with her compliment. That is great to know. You have lovely eyes. He gave his hand another wave at her to shut her eyes. The lingering moonlight lit up the entire hill, but there was no sign of anyone around. Di Fui found himself on the spot where Gu Shijio had rested before looking a little pale. Had she left? Her work was not done yet, right? She needed 32 more pieces. That should be another full day of work. How could she simply abandon her task? Di Fui took a quick glance around the hill, but could not see anyone. Where had she gone? Although Di Fui was concerned for her well-being, Gu Zijia's kung fu should be enough for her to keep almost anyone away. That thought put his mind at ease a little. Nevertheless, he decided to contact her using a spell, but she did not pick up the call. Was she ignoring him? How could she cancel their wedding so easily? Having known her, she would not simply ignore him this way. Moreover, from the way she proposed the cancellation, she sounded quite carefree about it. It was normal for her to feel a little lost, as it would be quite troublesome for her to find another man to take over his role. She even mentioned that he was still a friend, so there was no point in avoiding him. Furthermore, she would not leave unless she had all the stones that she needed. Therefore, her sudden disappearance must be a sign of danger. Di Fui closed his eyes and was determined to stay calm at all costs. A thorough search was then carried out on every inch of the hill. After some time, Di Fui caught hold of a rather strong smell coming from one of the spiritual stones. Corals of 3 feet tall surrounded the place, along with white doors that were made from the shells of hawksbill turtles. These doors were currently swaying along with the currents. Chapter 2900. The dissolution of their engagement. 4. There was a table set that was entirely carved from crystals, embellished with a base of emerald jade. The bed was made of white jade, complete with a sophisticated pearl lamp. The mermaid silk decorations gently danced in the current, softly creasing with fine lines like a natural work of art. Gu Shijio found herself on the white jade bed as she studied the entire setting of the place. Puzzled, she thought that Meng Huiya needed her to threaten Di Fui. As a hostage, she should be kept in some sort of confinement with the highest level of security, or even tortured with some form of extreme punishment. Read more chapters at Is novel. Calm. Therefore, she was mentally prepared for the worst. But to her surprise, she ended up in such a picturesque place. More accurately, it was some form of crystal palace that appeared to be an architectural masterpiece. The crystal palace was situated at the bottom of the most famous river in the Devil Kingdom, the Soulless River. Her last visit to the Soulless River opened her eyes to many resentful devil spirits in the water. These devils could those who died a painful death, or those that still kept an ill resentment within them. Their grudge forced them to linger on, and eventually they became savagely fierce creatures that swallowed anything or anyone they saw in the river. Even the bones of their unfortunate victims will vanish. It was completely out of her expectation that there would be a remarkable crystal palace nestling at the bottom of the river. When Meng Huiya first dived into the water, she was actually quite concerned about the structure of the wizardry barrier. A slight error would allow the fierce devil spirits to break through the barrier, and if that happened, she would have no choice but to reveal her true self and shatter these spirits with her own power. Luckily, the wizardry barrier that Meng Huiya cast was extremely solid. No matter how the devil spirits tried to break in, the barrier remained completely unaffected. There was not even a scratch. The quality was really impressive. Gu Shijio finally felt at ease and continued to play her role as a sweet, enchanted hostage in his bubble-shaped wizardry barrier. In fact, she was curious to see what he wanted to do. Surprisingly, he left hastily as soon as he hid her away in the Crystal Palace, leaving Gu Shijio with a lot of question marks in her head. What was he trying to do, actually? Fortunately, it did not take long for him to return from his impromptu trip. Finally, she knew what he actually wanted. He was trying to seduce her. The man showed her around the Crystal Palace and told her every fancy detail about the place. Thanks to his commentary, she knew that the place was solely built by him. Every single brick, or tile had its own story. The whole tour was actually a major revelation of how he prevailed against many other creatures. At first, Gushijio was quite interested in finding out the intention of the man, but the storyline soon became dry and dull. She finally figured out that he was trying to make himself sound like an unrivaled man so that she would admire his exemplary heroism. Luckily, apart from kidnapping her, Meng Wuya was quite polite to her so far. He did not keep her unconscious or locked up. It would seem that the man needed to win her heart. Women would usually be attracted to heroes, especially the ones who kept them safe. Meng Wuya believed so, at least. He had kept the devil's spirits away while they were traveling in the river, as her presence had drawn too much attention. And later, a severe earthquake shook the riverbed, so he steadily started casting a series of spells to support the Crystal Palace from collapsing. "Don't worry, I shall keep you safe," he kept reassuring. Since he seemed to have everything under control, Gu Zijiat took his service for granted and just sat and watched. As it stood, he would even go the distance to flatter her with precious jewelry. Persuasively, he seemed to be speaking with sincere and intense conviction. Sponsored content. After a long day of showing off, Gu Shijio finally got a grasp of his intention. Like a peacock fanning its feathers in a display, he was actually trying to impress her with as many assets as he could possibly boast. She touched her face in bewilderment, wondering if her disguise had somehow been removed. If she remembered correctly, she should look rather ordinary, but surprisingly, it was enough to attract many men. Perhaps her brilliant character was what they valued the most. Apparently, a mediocre appearance could not hold her back. If Gu Shijio were any younger, she would believe that this man was sincerely trying to woo her. However, years of experiencing the real world had taught her to be cautious about excessive compliments. The man must be planning for something more. Otherwise, he would not go completely out of his way to impress her. "Little Jio, what are you looking at?" Meng Wuya approached her with a tray in his hand. Sponsored content. Gu Shijio saw the tray and was immediately attracted by the fact that her favorite food filled the plates. Her favorite passion fruit cookies were nicely prepared and had an irresistible smell. Frankly, Gu Shijio was more impressed by the food than his excessive flaunting. He had done so many things, but finally got one right. Happily, she started indulging in the food. "Do you like it?" Meng Wuya seemed relieved at her approval of the food. He had done everything he could in the past 2 days, but she was largely uninterested in what he had to offer. Finally, there was some progress. "I do." She complimented his great choice of food. "Are you really the fiancé of the national master?" Meng Wuya suddenly added. She remained very non-committal and only answered with a smile, for she knew that he would be asking more questions. Sponsored content. As expected, Meng Wuya began his interview. "Little Jio, what do you think about polygamous relationships? Would you share your husband with another concubine, or would you mind if he marries another wife?" Gu Shijio took a moment to think about it. When she was ready, she replied, "No, I would not mind." From the beginning, Gu Shijio knew that this was all meant to be a show. Having a husband was not part of her plan at any point anyway. Meng Wuya was quite surprised by her honesty. "You are lying." He then grasped her by the wrist and pulled her to him. "Come with me." Gu Shijio pushed his hand away with obvious reluctance. "I will go with you. Stop pulling me." Sponsored content. Meng Wuya did not argue with her and led the way. Soon, they visited the backyard of the Crystal Palace and saw an enormous royal blue crystal stone. Gu Shijio saw it once when she first visited the Crystal Palace. A quick touch on the surface was enough for her to sense the strong flow of spiritual energy within the crystal stone. It was quickly apparent to her that the power it contained was even stronger than any of the spiritual stones that she had harvested over the past few days. At one point, she even thought about taking the crystal stone away to place it within the Tianyin Valley. Little did she know that Meng Wuya was going to bring her to the stone. Soon, he began performing with a series of activation spells to turn the crystal stone into a mirror. Images then started playing across the mirror in front of her. Pavilions, terraces, and open halls were displayed in vivid colors, forming a bustling city view. Gu Shijio found it impressive and decided to keep watching. What came after was a scenic view of the monster kingdom, along with its inhabitants. Two familiar faces then appeared on the screen. They were Di Fui and Tu Shannying, the ruler of the monster kingdom. They could be seen having a chat under a tree. The message was very clear. It did not take long for Gu Shijio to know that they were talking about a deal. Sponsor content, it seemed that Tu Shannying was obsessed with Di Fui. Perhaps she was as equally obsessed with him as she was in regaining her title as the Monster King. So Di Fui went on and tempted her with a fruitful deal. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Note, please download the sponsor's game to support us. Di Fui offered his help to make her the next Monster King, but in return, she had to become his concubine. Sponsored content too, Shannying was a little reluctant at first. She confessed her love to him again and asked if she could be his legal wife instead. Together, they could both rule the monster kingdom together. To which Di Fui replied very frankly, "The monster kingdom is not all that I am interested in. This is my only offer. If you agree to it, I will help you with all that I can, or get someone else to help you achieve your goal." "Are you going to marry another woman?" Tu Shannying was quite disheartened. "Of course. I will only have one wife. The rest will be my concubines." Tu Shannying thought about the offer for quite some time before agreeing to him. At a loss for words, Gu Shijio stared at the screen blankly. Sponsored content suddenly. The whole setting displayed on the mirror was changed to the celestial kingdom. The Emperor Immortal could be seen drinking with Di Fui. However, the content of their conversation remained quite the same. Di Fui was asking the Emperor Immortal if he could have the princess as his concubine. In return, he would be at the Emperor Immortal's service to rebuild the celestial kingdom. The Emperor Immortal accepted the offer immediately and even went into details to discuss their collaboration. "Little Gio, how do you feel about it?" Meng Huia looked at her fixedly for an answer. She did not know that she was obliged to review the show. Nevertheless, she was also curious. Why must he use these concubines to secure his success? She finally revealed her concern. Sponsored content Meng Huia answered with a hint of sarcasm. It is a prevalent tactic used by most rulers to increase their influence. Royal marriages are not a union of love, but a game of power. The royal officials will only swear their oath of loyalty to the king when their daughters become part of the royal family. The king has to keep the marriages going to spread his power evenly, apart from extending the royal bloodline. Di Fui intends to rule the 6 worlds, but has never ruled a kingdom before. However, his status was even nobler than royalty everywhere else. Once the fragmented world is united, all rulers will bow before him as submission of their loyalty. His marriage with the princesses will serve as a promise in return that he will always have their backs. Gu Shijio could not agree more. Most emperors from the mundane world have been doing the same for years. "I see," she answered, seemingly with a clear understanding of the situation now. Meng Huia was at a loss for words. Her calm response certainly came as a surprise to him. He actually thought she would be devastated or even overwhelmed with a sense of outrage. Neither happened. She only seemed enlightened. "Aren't you jealous?" Meng Huia studied her expression intently. Frankly, she did not even know what jealousy felt like. If anything, she just felt slightly uncomfortable. Therefore, she dismissed his concern right away. "No." Sponsored content Meng Huia got the hint. "It seems that you do not really love him." Indeed, there was no love. It was just a show, one which was about to be discontinued. In fact, she was already looking for someone else to take the role. Quietly, she had studied Meng Huia while listing down his strengths. He was capable, good-looking, and very charming. He had fulfilled all the qualities to be her next candidate, except for his lack of sincerity. His heart was obviously not in the right place to begin with. Having him around would possibly cause her more problems. Nevertheless, she still stuck around as she had not found out what he wanted. "It does not matter if I love him or not. As you said, men are all the same. It is a fact that I cannot change," she answered while keeping her eyes away. "No, you have a choice," Meng Huia exclaimed excitedly. Sponsored content. Not all men like the custom of having more than one wife. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Note: please download the sponsor's game to support us. Not all men like the custom of having more than one wife. Take me as an example. I believe that love is best shared between two souls. If I ever get married, I will love my wife wholeheartedly without any second thoughts. I will never marry another woman or make my wife feel bad. Sponsored content. Gu Shijio was impressed by his undivided commitment. Proudly, she gave him a thumbs up. It is great that you are willing to commit. Your future wife will be so lucky. Meng Huiya seized the chance to ask her, "Little Jio, would you like to be the lucky one?" Gu Shijio was dumbfounded. "Are you not interested? I'm not any worse than Di Fui. I only choose to have a low profile because I do not have much interest in politics. I would rather take my wife on a world tour to see the most spectacular views and eat the best food that the world has to offer." Sponsored content. What he described was the desirable life of a hermit. However, Gu Shijio knew his intentions too well to give him her trust. His sudden appearance was actually a well-planned plot, so she did not believe anything that he said. Meng Huiya was only here because he needed to secure his father's power in the Devil Kingdom. The Devil King was no longer around, and the successor had yet to be assigned. Di Fui had not made a clear indication on whose side he was going to take, so the regent and his son must be worried about his involvement. The little princess must be their tool to gain his trust, but she would never agree to be a concubine. Therefore, Gu Shijio had naturally become their common enemy. However, since she had not exposed her identity yet, if they really took her as an enemy, they should have assassinated her. Why did they send their son to marry her? "Do you know who I am?" Gu Shijio asked. Sponsored content. Meng Huiya was taken by surprise, obviously. You are the only woman I have ever loved." What a flirtatious man. Gu Shijio began to tease him. "You do not even know where I come from. How is that even love?" Meng Huiya looked at her slightly awkwardly and said, "Little Jio, have you heard of love at first sight? Your ethereal beauty has bewitched me." Sponsored content. She could feel chills down her spine at this point. The man was taking it too far. She was not someone who could be fooled by these superficial words. Unimpressed, she looked away. "You are a very good-looking man, my prince. Why should you give your heart to someone so ordinary like me? Stop making fun of me." Troubled, Meng Huiya tried to explain to her, "Your looks are nothing but a cover for your body. Your depth of character is what I admire the most." "Oh, what about my character? You brought me here as soon as we met. There was hardly any conversation. How did you get to know me any better?" Sponsored content. Meng Huiya was dumbstruck, so he took a while to gather his words. "Little Jio, to you, that was our first encounter by the hill, but to me, I've been thinking about you since I first saw you some time ago." That did not quite make sense. She had just disguised herself when she first arrived in the Devil Kingdom, so the persona she carried was still fresh and new. How long had he been thinking about her, exactly? Gu Shijio continued. "How many days have you been back in the kingdom?" Meng Huiya answered, "Not long ago. I have not been around in the Devil Kingdom much until I heard about you. I came all the way back, only to fall in love with you. However, I had to keep these feelings to myself because you are already the fiancé of the National Master. Seeing him with my sister prompted me to review his life by using the tracing spell. That is how I came across those images. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Note: please download the sponsor's game to support us. He is not the right man for you, which is why I have brought you here. Sponsored content. He made a good point. Gu Shijio could not think of anything to argue with him at the moment. Little did she know that he would seize the window of opportunity to grab her hands. Little Jio. Splash. Bam. Meng Huiya was thrown into a thermal pool nearby with a splash. Shocked, Meng Huiya emerged from the water and looked at Gu Shijio in utter disbelief. Little Jio. She literally threw him out, overarm. Even Gu Shijio herself was bewildered by her quick reaction. She had not put much thought into her decision. Innocently, She blinked her eyes at him and said, "My prince, are you all right?" Sponsored content remove ads? Great Kung Fu, little Gio. Meng Huiya had to admit it. Not even a great deity could send him across the air so easily, even though he was unprepared. How could a lady with the strength of a golden immortal throw him out so effortlessly? I am flattered. It is nothing more than a self-defense skill passed down to me in my family. Gu Shijio gave him a smart answer. Your family? Where are you from? Meng Huiya seemed a little curious. Gu Shijio raised her index finger to her lips and replied, "It is a secret." Sponsored content remove ads? Dumbfounded, Meng Huiya did not know what to say. Meanwhile, Gu Shijio began yawning. "Thank you for your hospitality over the past 2 days. It is time for me to go." She needed more spiritual stones to complete her task. Another day of work should do it, and she did not want to be delayed. After she got the stones she needed, she would leave the Devil Kingdom. Anything that happened between her and Di Fui would remain in the Devil Kingdom. "Where are you going?" Meng Huiya asked. Gu Shijio did not look back, but walked straight to the exit. She could have used her teleporting ability, but it would immediately give her identity away. Exposing herself was the last thing that she wanted right now. Sponsored content remove ads? Smilingly, Meng Huiya looked at her in disbelief. He assumed that she would never be able to leave this place without his help. Right at that moment, a dense cloud of devil spirits surrounded the entire Crystal Palace. Without the right ability, she would instantly be shredded into pieces after one tiny step out of the safety zone. He was confident that she would change her mind once she was reminded of them. He decided to take his time and slowly emerged from the thermal pool and started combing his hair calmly. There was no rush at all since she was not going anywhere. Unhurriedly, he followed her to the exit and was ready to tell her that she could never make it out alone. On his to the exit, the howling of the devil's spirits startled him. It was a sign of the spirits being triggered by something. Swiftly, he sprung into action, knowing that any delay would result in her untimely death. The lady clearly had guts, that much he knew. She should have stopped at the sight of the devil's spirits. Instead, she went on. Upon arriving at the exit, his eyes caught hold of Gu Shijio in a bubble of light while making her way out of the water. The devil spirits clearly chased after her and screeched at the horizon of her bubble of light, but none of them dared to go any closer. Oddly, she could glide her way through the dangerous water with no resistance at all. The devil spirits even gave way to her automatically, like how Moses parted the Red Sea. Sponsored content remove ads? Meng Huiya stared at her in silent amazement. In order to safely travel through the water, he had to apply a layer of devil spirit-resistant herbs to keep him safe. Even then, occasionally, some spirits would still attack him. To his utter surprise, the lady only wrapped herself in a layer of wizardry barrier, and somehow that seemed to be enough to keep her safe even in the presence of the fiercest spirits. How powerful can she possibly be? He pondered. Could she be the creator of the universe? He shivered at the thought and refused to think about it anymore. "Little Gio, wait a minute," he called out loud while making his way to her. However, Gu Shijun never turned back. She only waved him goodbye. "If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Note, please download the sponsor's game to support us." Gu Shijun never turned back. She only waved him goodbye. "My prince, there is no need to escort me. Don't worry. I have no problem with your sister marrying him as long as it is something he wants to do." Sponsored content Meng Huiya was speechless. He never thought that she knew about his plan all along. In the beginning, Gu Shijio was just an accessory in his plan. He never actually cared about her. But watching her leave now finally made him confront his feelings. "Little Gio, I really like you," he said to her, truthfully this time. Roar! A sudden cry alarmed Meng Huiya. He knew that someone must have hit the water and consequently triggered the devil spirits. He assumed that it must be someone fearless in the face of death. Sponsored content remove ads? All of a sudden, the water from above started to become clouded with bubbles. Chaotically, these devil spirits started fleeing down from above, as if they had seen something utterly horrifying. Meanwhile, Gushijio slowly made her way up, so the devil spirits from the bottom had to move upward to let her through. In an instant, the two opposing forces collided. Panicked, the devil spirits started fleeing in all directions from the chaos. Meng Huiya did not know what to say, for he had never seen anything quite like this before. He had been in and out of the soulless river many times, and there had never been an oddity in the spirits' behavior, apart from their ferocity. Someone powerful must have caused the panic, but he had no idea who it could be. Nevertheless, his confusion was soon answered. Glimpses of purple light could be seen shining through the dark water, like the sun in a heavily clouded sky. The ball of light was traveling down the water at an impressive pace. Meng Huiya could not hold his astonishment any longer. The newcomer was Di Fui. He never thought that the man would find them here. Sponsored content remove ads? Because of the pace that he was traveling, it only took around a second for Di Fui to reach Gushijio. Both of them were coming together from different directions, so they stopped abruptly to take a better look at one another. After a long sigh of relief, Di Fui went on to grasp her by the wrist. "Gio," he called out her name. Gushijio had to make a swift turn to avoid his hand. She shifted her body aside and asked, rather dully, "Why are you here?" Di Fui was surprised by her lack of emotion. He continued, "Good to see that you are doing fine. Let's talk when we get out." Sponsored content remove ads? The devil spirits were still circling in the dark water, so it was not the best place for them to talk. Gushijio agreed, and with a nod, she continued to make her way up. Initially, she wanted to talk to him in a quiet place after getting back on the shore. Their engagement had to be formally and peacefully dissolved, as there was no point in continuing the show. From then on, she wanted nothing to do with him, whether he chose to marry someone else or not. She had to be firm in order to make Di Fui agree to her. After all, he was already dating the princess. She refused to be an unnecessary burden in their relationship. However, what happened on shore was completely out of her expectations. Sponsored content remove ads? The quiet riverside was no longer the way it was before. Mountains of people of different social classes were all present by the river. As soon as she made her way out of the water, she immediately became the center of attention. Gushijio felt as though she was lost. What was happening? Was the Devil Kingdom hosting a major meeting by the river? There were some faces that she recognized. Yin Jusi, the regent, Meng Luqing, and Yin Mingzhu were standing among the crowd. She looked around and caught something even more surprising. Two individuals with the least interest in the matters here in the Devil Kingdom were both present as well. Fan Qianshi and Wu Qinyan. They were among the spectators, staring at her fixedly like everyone else. Fan Qianshi was casually there to see what was about to unfold, but his face fell as soon as Gushijio emerged from the water. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Note: please download the sponsor's game to support us. His face went pale in an instant. Wu Qinyan, on the other hand, gaped at Gushijio in silent wonder. She was so shocked that she almost called out to Gushijio in public. Sponsored content among the people in the crowd. Only Fan Qianshi and Wu Qinyan could see through Gushijio's disguise. No matter what disguises Gushijio chose to use, there would always be a mole next to her lips, though in varying sizes. Years of traveling with Gushijio in disguise had left them with a strong impression of her. The unchanging position of the mole was how they recognized her. She never thought they would both be in the Devil Kingdom. The sudden turn of events would make it an inappropriate time to discuss the breakup with Di Fui. Otherwise, her entire effort of distancing herself from Fan Qianshi would go to waste. There she is. Miss Jiu is really here. That is right. The National Master has been looking for her. Hey, she is absolutely fine being alone in the soulless river. It looks like she has got some qualities in her kung fu. Sponsored content remove ads? Humph. What quality is there to be proud of? Can't you see there's a layer of wizardry barrier around her body? National Master D must have made it for her. The little princess sarcastically commented. That is right. She would never have made it out with her lousy kung fu. Someone chimed in along with the princess. The discussion went on with many different opinions from different parties. Unfazed, Gu Shijie rose from the water amid the talks and stopped right there in the air, gazing at the crowd in an unconcerned manner. Di Fui emerged later with a leap and stopped by her side. Sponsored content remove ads? Congratulations, Master, for finally locating Miss Gio. The servants chanted in unison. Miss Gio, Master has been looking for you everywhere. Every inch of the Devil Kingdom had been thoroughly searched. I am glad that you are fine. Gu Shijie turned to look at Di Fui. Did you bring them here? She was happy that he came to her rescue, but was annoyed by the masses of people around. Di Fui answered with a hesitant nod. Yes, but I had no choice. Sponsored content remove ads? No choice. Gu Shijie was puzzled. The emergence of Meng Wuya interrupted their conversation. Who are you exactly? Meng Wuya asked while staring at Gu Shijie with undivided attention. Gu Zijius furrowed her brows with disapproval. Surely, he already had some doubts about her identity. The regent suddenly raised his voice and said, Miss Gio is really here. It has been a tough search, hasn't it? He then turned to look at Di Fui. Nevertheless, her presence here still does not prove that she is not responsible for the king's assassination. She could have gone into hiding after murdering the king. Gu Shijie understood nothing from his accusation. When did she become a suspect? When the king was murdered, she was busy collecting the spiritual stones on her own. Sponsored content remove ads? The officials who stood by the regent started chiming in. They were already assuming Gu Shijie was the murderer for 4 reasons. First of all, she had great kung fu, which made her capable of the king's assassination. Secondly, she did not have any evidence in support of an alibi. Thirdly, she disappeared right after the king was murdered, as if fleeing to avoid punishment. Lastly, a loyal escort of the deceased Devil King saw her fleeing from the palace, and her hairpin was found at the scene of the assassination. Gu Shijie listened on to their well-prepared arguments. Apparently, she had become the victim of their false claims. Amused, she started defending herself without even looking at Di Fui for help. There are at least 88 people here in the Devil Kingdom that are known to have better kung fu than the Devil King, so all of them have equal chances of murdering him. Also, the assassination took place during the midnight hours, the time when people are usually sleeping. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Note, please download the sponsor's game to support us. It would be tough for anyone to provide evidence of their absence. Are they all the culprits? Thirdly, I was not missing. I was kidnapped and brought to the Soulless River. Fourthly, the words of the guard could be a lie. The man could have easily been bribed to provide false evidence and blame me. As for the hairpin, I did lose a hairpin over the past few days. As it is worthless, I did not bother to look for it, and now it seems someone with ulterior motives is using it against me. I would assume that the man stole it and is using it to frame me. Last but not least, I have to explain that I did not have any motive to kill the Devil King. Sponsored content, she argued with rationale, and the regent was choked by her comments for a moment. Nonsense! The young princess screamed in anger. You must have motives. The Devil King once wanted to arrange a marriage for me with the National Master. I'm sure that you wanted to rebel against it. National Master D must be thinking the same too. He wanted to do everything possible to find you and catch you. Gu Shijie laughed as she looked at Di Fui and asked, You searched for me because of this. Sponsored content remove ads? Di Fui stepped forward step. It is not her who murdered the Devil King. The reason why I have not been explaining in the past few days is that I knew that she was in your hands. I was afraid that you all would act disadvantageously toward her, so I have not exposed you all. Now that she is safe, then I have nothing to hide. Do you all want to find out the identity of the real murderer of the Devil King? All the truths are here. He took out a light blue snail recorder, opened it, and there was a dialogue between many people inside. It was the original conversation recorded in the regent's secret room the other day. Everyone's voice was distinct to the point where any ministers who were slightly familiar with them could distinguish their respective voices. Those gathered around the Soulless River were not only high-ranking officials, but also the ordinary people from the Devil Kingdom. They, too, heard the conversation very clearly. Sponsored content remove ads? Once the snail recorder played for a moment, the facial expression of the regent and his men all changed. Even Meng Huai's handsome face turned pale. Fake. This is fake. Visit our Ist novel. Come. The regent yelled as he denied everything. It must be that someone wanted to frame me and made this fake snail recorder. The ministers that were loyal to him naturally did not admit as well. However, regardless of how they denied, the people did not buy it. After all, the voices they heard were clear and evident. Furthermore, no one had seen a manipulated snail recorder before. Sponsored content remove ads. For so many years, the regent held the political ruling, and the Devil King had been suppressed under his control. But after Di Fui came, the Devil King stopped listening to the regent. They also had a big quarrel in the Jinluan Hall. Almost everyone knew about this incident. Therefore, it was not surprising if the regent planned to kill the Devil King. What's more, since the death of the Devil King, the regent kept urging the people to appoint a new king. He said, "The country can't be a day without a king to get the youngest son of the Devil King, who is 3 years old, to be the new king." However, it was Di Fui who argued that they should seek revenge for the Devil King first before getting a new king and refuted his proposal. Since Di Fui carried a high status and was deeply loved by the people, his words carried a lot of weight. Together with other courtiers' consent to Di Fui's plan, the regent had to agree with him. Sponsored content remove ads? If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Note, please download the sponsor's game to support us. The regent had plotted against Gu Shijio for a long time now. He ordered his son to kidnap her when she was alone, then accused her of killing the Devil King. Sponsored content at that time, Di Fui did not say anything else, which made it seem that he also agreed to his statement. Nevertheless, he said that he would find Gu Shijio first. As long as it could be proven that Gu Shijio murdered the Devil King, he would not be selfish about the matter and would settle her personally. Because of Di Fui's objective approach to the situation, the regent was relieved. He even pretended to accompany Di Fui to look for Gu Shijio. Since Di Fui was a very capable man, in 2 days his investigations led him to the Soulless River, and he concluded that Gu Shijio was in the depths of the river. Although Soulless River was a raging river, it was also a sacred river in the eyes of the devils. Therefore, no one was allowed to approach this place. Sponsored content remove ads? There were only 2 kinds of people who could go close. One was the warriors of the devils. To prove one's heroism, he needed to wash his hands by the river. If he were not pulled in by the evil spirit inside, he was declared to be a true hero recognized by the devil god and would be respected by the people. Otherwise, he would die a quick death without a bone left of him. The second was when they needed to sacrifice the living. It was a sacrifice to the devil spirits. Other than that, no one was allowed to enter the river. Doing so would be disrespectful to the entire devil world, and the people involved would be captured. Visit our Ist novel. Calm because of the need to search the place, Di Fui naturally caused dissatisfaction among the majority of the devils, and everyone flocked to stop him. The 2 sides were arguing. Although Di Fui was in a hurry, he also understood that he could not fight too hard, or he would offend the whole devil world, and he might not be able to go down the river with peace of mind. Thus, he made a bet with the regent that if he could not find Gu Shijio below the river, he would immediately leave the devil world and ensured that he would not intervene in the devil world's affairs in his lifetime. Sponsored content remove ads? This condition made the regent extremely tempted to agree, but he also understood that Gu Shijio was in the river. If Di Fui were allowed to search the place, the regent was certain that he would find her. Therefore, he still looked for various reasons to stop him. The problem with the plan was that the ministers under the regent's command did not know the inside story and felt that this was an excellent opportunity to drive Di Fui away, so they asked the regent to agree. If the regent king did not agree, he would probably lose the trust of his people and would also appear to be guilty. At that moment, the principal disciple of the god of creation, Fan Qianshi, came with his servant. His identity was noble enough, and he volunteered to be the middleman to settle the dispute. Di Fui promised that if he found Gu Shijio here, he would not flee. Furthermore, if she truly killed the Devil King, he would give justice to the Devil World. Sponsored content remove ads? The commotion caused many people to gather on the riverbank, and in the end, Di Fui was right. Gu Shijio was indeed below the river. Meng Hui's presence came as a bonus to them. Obviously, Meng Huia was with Gu Shijio. This made Gu Zijia's claim of being kidnapped seem more believable. Additionally, the people were naturally more convinced by what Di Fui said, not to mention the fact that he had proof right in his hands, so his credibility was even higher. Many eyes fell on the regent now, waiting for an explanation. The man's facial expression looked calm like water. He understood that public opinion was not favorable to him, but he was not rattled one bit. He was fully prepared. Sponsored content remove ads? After all, this devil world was his territory. Even if Di Fui were capable, he would not act against the whole devil world. He looked at Di Fui and began to make his case. National Master Di, you are not from the devil world, but you always intervene in our affairs. You must have your own intention. Your ambition is to control the devil world, right? Or perhaps your dreams are bigger and you want to control the 6 realms and be the master of these 6 realms. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Note, please download the sponsor's game to support us. You know that I will not allow myself to be controlled by you. Therefore, you created this whole situation to trap me into your game. I have always been loyal to the Devil King. Likewise, he had always believed in me, but you deliberately influenced him to rebel against me. I did have a few complaints about him, and sometimes I was even angry with him and let out a few bitter words. They might not be true. However, you took advantage and used some unknown method to grasp this information. And now, you're trying to cover up everything. Perhaps you were the one who poisoned the Devil King and deliberately blamed it on me to kick me out of the game, and then support the prince to succeed the throne and be under your control. Sponsored content Gu Shijio crossed her arms. She felt that the regent's ability to reason was excellent. Most of his statements were actually quite coherent, and some were even true. But before Di Fui could do anything about it, the regent could not hold back his patience and sent assassins to kill the Devil King. This regent was really intelligent, so he should finally understand the whole situation now. This knowledge would certainly aid him in turning things around. In the end, the regent's words were persuasive enough, and some of the ministers and the people started to doubt Di Fui. The followers of the regent king were all gossiping with one another. They all said that Di Fui had a bad intention. In the crowd, there were many followers of the regent as well. Therefore, they all stood behind the regent. Aside from some loud accusations, a wave of discussion filled the place. The situation was quite unfavorable to Di Fui at the moment. Sponsored content remove ads? In this wave of controversy, the regent raised his hand and gestured. This was a secret code that signaled the soldiers in the vicinity to rush out from the darkness and encircle Di Fui and Gu Shijio. Their swords were unsheathed, and their arrows were ready on the string of their bow. Many silver swords glistened under the light. The regent sneered at Di Fui now, for the soldiers he had gathered were all his elites. If all these elite acted together, they could even conquer the whole celestial kingdom. Therefore, he assumed that Di Fui and Gu Shijio were no match for him. Apparently, this time, he wanted to set in Di Fui's life. Visit our L ist novel. Come, he shouted coldly. Di Fui You are ambitious to think you can stick your hands in matters around all 6 realms. Are you trying to replace the god of creation? According to my knowledge, the god of creation has not been around lately. Have you harmed her? He looked at Fan Qianshi and continued, Mr. Qianshi, I heard that you have been looking for your master recently, but you can't find her, right? Sponsored content remove ads. Fan Qianshi looked down at the ground. My master has been missing for more than 2 months. Indeed, I am anxious. Wu Qinyan looked at Gu Shijiao and could not help but pull Fan Qianshi's sleeves to try to hint to him that their master was standing right there. Fan Qianshi then changed his stance. But my master's skill is superior to Di Fui's. She cannot be harmed easily. She has always been mysterious. Therefore, her disappearance may be because she has her own plans as well. In my opinion, this matter ends here. Everyone goes back first and sorts this out with one another. The truth will be revealed one day. We don't have to be anxious at this time. Sponsored content remove ads. He did not know that the so-called MS Ajio was his master. He now immensely regretted his earlier action and almost vomited blood. At this time, he did not want to expose the identity of his master. Otherwise, the fact that God of Creation had become Di Fui's fiancé was going to be realized. Meanwhile, Meng Weia also already faintly guessed Gu Zijia's identity. He, too, did not want her to be exposed at this time. Otherwise, the situation would be more unfavorable to them. Therefore, he also persuaded his father to follow Fan Qianshi's instructions and persuaded his father to hold back his soldiers. Unfortunately, the regent did not know the inside story and still had a raging fire in his body. After Fan Qianshi came to the Devil World, they had secretly communicated with each other. Fan Qianshi affirmed the regent that he would support him and even promised to help him a deal with Di Fui. Sponsored content remove ads. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Note, please download the sponsors game to support us. Therefore, the regent did not expect Fan Qianshi to change direction at such a critical moment. What was even more annoying was that his precious son actually echoed his thoughts. He angrily said, "It is a matter concerning the life of the god of creation. How can we let go so easily? We must take Di Fui down today." Sponsored content, yes. Yes, he must have killed the god of creation. The divine lord is so kind and fair. She is highly respected and won love from all the 6 realms. We must seek revenge for her. Many people began to echo. The regent felt proud in his heart. He did not want this matter to be delayed anymore. He had created a good momentum, and the odds were in his favor, so he waved his hand to gesture the start of the attack. Just then, many swords charged toward Di Fui and his fiancée. The soldiers wielding them were all at a level equivalent to a might immortal in the upper bound. Needless to say, they were ferocious and dangerous. Obviously, the regent did not want to catch Di Fui alive. The man wanted him dead. It was beyond his expectation that Di Fui and his followers could block the attack. The regent stood there and sneered. "Whoever blocks me needs to die." Today was the day that he would take the opportunity to eliminate Di Fui once and for all. Sponsored content remove ads. The smile on his lips had not fully spread before. Shua. A sound was heard, and a colorful barrier appeared across the sky, which guarded Di Fui and his team. The colorful barrier blocked several sword squadrons that were charging at them viciously. The commotion did not end there. The knives were hit against the color barrier were turned into slag and scattered around the ground. The regent's facial expression changed abruptly, and he subconsciously stepped back. Meanwhile, there were people in the devil world that recognized the enchanting barrier. They exclaimed, "It is the god of creation's enchantment. The god of creation is here. The god of creation. Gosh, she is the god of creation." Sponsored content remove ads. Inside the barrier, Gu Shijiao, who had always been carrying the appearance of an average person, directly revealed her real face. She looked stunning and put a group of female demons to shame. Her long dress was fluttering, and her body was shrouded in light. Her aura was so mighty that it put immense pressure on the people around her. She looked like a god who was overlooking her beings. Some of the senior generals from the Devil world had once followed the Devil King to celebrate the birthday of the god of creation. Therefore, they were fortunate enough to see her original appearance from afar before and immediately recognized it. The regent never expected that the ordinary woman next to Di Fui was actually the god of creation. He was also stunned for a moment, and this time, he did not keep his composure. Even his fingers were trembling. Sponsored content remove ads? The appearance of the god of creation could be faked by someone daring, but the enchantment that she used could only be performed by the real god of creation and not anyone else. This enchantment was basically her iconic move, and no one could copy it. Many people had seen the god of creation's enchantment in the Devil world. Even if the regent wanted to deny her identity, he could not do it now. Sure enough, after she exposed this skill, many people were screaming and kneeled out of respect. In just a second, everyone had kneeled. The regent's legs went soft too, and he succumbed eventually. Meanwhile, Meng Huia looked pale as he slowly kneeled to the ground. It turned out that she was the god of creation. No wonder those evil spirits dared not approach her before. Finally, he realized that he actually kidnapped the god of creation for 3 days. He also pretended to seduce her to keep his father's plan intact. In fact, he felt that seducing her was a downgrade. It was only now that he realized that he was the one who was on a lower platform. Sponsored content remove ads? She must have found his entire act equivalent to clowns jumping around in a circus, right? Or was it like watching a monkey performing some tricks? If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Note, please download the sponsor's game to support us. Meng Huia felt like he was slapped hard on the face. Sponsored content with Zigius glamorous reveal. The rumors about Di Fui killing her naturally no longer made any sense. Painting her as the main suspect of the Devil King's murder also did not make sense. Once Gu Shijie revealed her original appearance, she also said one thing. Her voice was calm, but the words she said were no less than a thunderbolt to the parties involved. The snail recorder was mine. I was there when you discussed the rebellious matters. The contents inside this snail recorder are entirely accurate and true. The crowd remained silent. No one would doubt the words from the god of creation. Therefore, it seemed that the death of the Devil King was indeed related to the regent. At this time, the regent's face turned blue and pale. His eyes turned fierce, and he decided to have one last fight. I heard that the god of creation did not participate in politics. What happened this time? Is it because of your engagement with the national master that you now want to get involved in politics and work something out for him? Sponsored content remove ads? His subordinates immediately seconded. Yes, the god of creation originally belonged to the 6 realms, but now she has an engagement with the national master. It is difficult to ensure that she does not participate in his affairs to benefit him. This is unfair. You are right. I didn't expect the god of creation to fall in love. It seems her objectivity can be questioned. Since the regent had come this far, he was naturally not willing to be defeated. As things had developed to this extent, only death awaited them if they confessed to their crime. Therefore, even though they knew that the god of creation was innocent, at this moment, they could only play along with the story and blame everything on Gu Shijie. Visit our L Ist novel. Sponsored content remove ads? The regent waved his hand and continued. Catch all of them. Those who were loyal to the regent naturally moved forward, while other soldiers who were only loyal to the Devil world looked at each other and did not know what to do at the moment. It was an absolute death penalty to attack the god of creation. They would be chased after by the people of the other 5 realms. Therefore, these people naturally did not dare to act rashly. Do you all want to rebel? A clear voice suddenly sounded from a distance. Do you really dare to attack the god of creation? Meng Lianxing, as the regent, was not loyal to our Devil King because of his personal ambition and has now put the king to death. This is a huge sin. It's alright if you all did not know the truth. However, now that the truth has been revealed, are you still willing to fight for him? Sponsored content. Remove ads. The voice of this person was very loud and could be heard by everyone. Many eyes turned on him. This person was enrich. His words were instrumental in persuading the crowd to think twice about their next move. In fact, those who were still hesitant looked at each other and then retreated without saying a word. Just like that, the number of soldiers that were out to attack Di Fui reduced by more than half. Meanwhile, the regent's eyes seemed to have a fire in them. He stared at enrich fiercely. It was rare to see him get involved in official matters. This time, he no longer looked like a hippie, but came with the aura of a king. Furthermore, several officials stood behind enrich. They were a combination of scholars and generals. This sudden move definitely affected the regent. As he was an intelligent man, he finally understood that enrich was the one behind everything. He was that man that Di Fui truly wanted to support from the start. Sponsored content. Remove ads. Most of the officials behind enrich had always been against the regent, so they did not exactly seem like a new problem for him. Nevertheless, what worried him the most was that one of the generals in charge of most of the soldiers in the devil world was also behind him. His position was equivalent to a marshal. The regent had always regarded him as his confidant and never hid anything from him when he did those dirty jobs. He did not expect this general to be a traitor sent by enrich. Sure enough, this general stood up and spoke. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Note, please download the sponsor's game to support us. Sure enough, this general stood up and said, "Meng Lianxing, you killed the Devil King, and the evidence is in my hand." Sponsored content. The regent remained silent, for he knew that the general had a lot of information about their plot. He did not hold back in releasing the material to the public. There were all kinds of pieces of evidence that he had gathered, people, items, and even the fact that the bodyguard that served the Devil King was bought off by the regent. All the pieces proved that he had greatly wronged Gu Shijiao. It also showed the evil things that Meng Lianxing had done in the devil world all these years. Every time he threw out something, the people would hiss in shock and disgust. By that time, no one doubted the truth anymore. The people were filled with anger and yelled openly to punish the culprit. As for the soldiers who initially stood by the regent, at that moment they were no longer loyal to him. Only a few were still on his side, perhaps because he had bought them over, or they were equally guilty. Sponsored content. Remove ads. Since things had developed to this extent, the regent king was obviously at a disadvantage. To add to his misery, enrich had suddenly emerged like a king out of the blue. He looked at the thousands of people in the area and said calmly, "The regent has done so many bad things to the people of the Devil Kingdom, and many of you have not been fully informed. Since you are the soldiers of the devil world, obeying his command was your duty, and there is nothing wrong with that. From this moment on, except for the few main culprits who had staged this entire plot, if you want to stay here, you will still be welcomed. I will not punish you for your past." Then he ordered his people to take out a basket of papers and said, "This paperwork has been collected for me when I was investigating your crimes. I haven't read them, but I will burn them and solve your worries as long as you can continue to do your best for the development of our devil world and be faithful to the country. In fact, I will still reward you for your service. Visit our El Ist novel." He flicked his fingers, and the papers began to burn rapidly. By doing so, he was giving those who were originally loyal to the regent a second chance, assuming they were not directly involved in his evil plots. Those who were given a second chance cheered and ran behind enrich. Sponsored content. Remove ads. In just that short period of time, the regent found that only dozens of people continued to surround him. Obviously, the situation was no longer favorable to them if he wanted to go to war. These dozens of people were the confidants of the regent. Their hands were full of blood too, and they could no longer look back. The only thing they could do was have one last fight, though it was obvious how that would go down under these circumstances. In the end, the regent and the dozens of people around him were killed on the spot. The angry soldiers even killed the young princess. Meng Huo took the opportunity to dive into the soulless river and disappeared in an instant. While Juicy became the next Devil King once he showed the people his true caliber. Sponsored content remove ads? Of course, the power struggle in the imperial court was an intricate matter that he had to deal with. He still needed to put in a lot of effort to stabilize his position. Eventually, everything was basically solved, but everyone was still curious about one matter. Some ministers couldn't help but ask on behalf of the rest of the people, "Divine Lord, are you really engaged to National Master D?" Gu Shijio was stunned by the question, and before she could say anything, Fan Qianshi spoke up, "Stupid. My master is the god of creation. Do you know how noble her identity is? Will she be so free to engage with other people so simply?" She had done this just to facilitate the investigation of Meng Lianxing. She had to disguise herself to make it real. It is definitely not true. Gu Shijio remained silent. She was really doing this as a temporary agenda, but it was not to resolve the affairs of the devil world, but to influence Fan Qianshi to stop going after her. When Fan Qianshi said these words, he was looking at Gu Shijio to see how she would respond. Sponsored content remove ads? He looked calm on the outside, and his lips were even curved upward with a smile, but there was a panic in his eyes that could not be hidden. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Note, please download the sponsors game to support us. Chapter 29:13. Is the engagement real? 3. Fan Qianshi strongly refuted the question to try to stop his nightmare from becoming a reality. Nevertheless, Gu Shijio had known him for so long, so she understood his emotions. She saw the pleading and fragility at the bottom of his eyes. She suddenly moved closer to Di Fui, deliberately not looking at her apprentice's face, and faintly said, "I am the god of creation, but it does not stipulate that the god of creation cannot get married. I am truly in love with National Master D. With him by my side, it will help me to manage the 6 realms more easily. June 15th of the 6 realms calendar is an auspicious day, and I will marry him in the Tianyin Valley on that day. I will invite all of you to come and celebrate with us. My principal disciple, Fan Qianshi, will arrange all the hospitality matters. Qianshi, I am now assigning this task to you. You must do it properly." Fan Qianshi felt like a thunderbolt struck him. He felt as though his head had been hit really hard as he looked at Gu Shijio. "Master!" His pair of eyes burned like fire, but Gu Shijio only stared at him coldly and said, "Qianshi, I know that you have the ability to make these arrangements happen. All right, that's all for now. I still have something else to attend to, and I need to leave now." Then, she turned and teleported away. In just the blink of an eye, she had disappeared from sight. Fan Qianshi was stunned. Meanwhile, Di Fui remained silent. In fact, everyone was stunned for a moment, but then they all turned to congratulate Di Fui. After all, Di Fui's abilities were well recognized by everyone. He had already made his mark on 3 realms out of the 6, and his prestige could only grow farther. Now, with the god of creation married to him, it put him in a better position to propel him forward to conquer the other 3 realms. In other words, the Lord of the 6 realms was going to be him. His followers were truly happy for him, and there were people in the crowd that shared the same sentiment. Once he became the Lord of the 6 realms, there would naturally be fewer disputes among the 6 realms. The long-awaited peace of the world and a world without war would soon be realized. Today was the 2nd day of June, and there were still 13 days to the date of the wedding. It was definitely very soon. When Di Hao looked at all of this, in his heart, he silently lit up a candle for Fan Qianshi. In fact, he suddenly felt sorry for Fan Qianshi. The man became the gold standard for unrequited love. His mother had no feelings for him at all and treated him purely as a disciple. She even tried to remove any emotions he had to set him up on the right path and make him concentrate solely on practicing. In this current triangle of love, Fan Qianshi was the most pitiful of the parties. But what about his father, Di Fui? He must not be feeling good, either. Di Hao looked at Di Fui in the frame and realized that despite the fact that people were cheering for him, there was no joy or sadness on his face. In a restaurant, Di Fui went up to the second floor and pushed the door of a room open. He saw Gu Shijio, who was drinking wine in the room. When she saw him coming, she made a gesture and said, "Sit." Di Fui sat opposite her and looked at her fixedly. "Are you finally willing to see me? Don't want to hide from me anymore?" He had been looking for her for 10 days since the incident, and it was only today that he received a directed audio from her to ask him to come here to meet her. Gu Shijio raised her hand and poured some wine for him. "You have overthought. I did not hide from you. I was busy with things and had no time to see you. I heard from Qianyin that preparations are going well. She said that you prepared everything in the Tianyin Valley, and it is very grand. I had a stroll around the valley today and must admit that I am pleased." Chapter 29:14. Is the engagement real? 4. My apprentice has not lived up to my expectations. I assigned this matter to him, but I did not expect that he would get drunk every day and not even get up when I tried to wake him. Her words were polite, but they were also somewhat formal, creating a sort of distance between her and Di Fui. Di Fui did not drink her wine, but swirled the glass in his hand. "What were you doing? Are you not even bothered about your own wedding?" Gu Shijio was stunned by his frank reply. She was swamped over the past 10 days, trying to arrange the starry array in a specific position. It was a very time-consuming and labor-intensive task. In fact, she had not left the place for 10 days and only finished it today. After she came out, she saw a significant change in the Tianyin Valley. Every inch of it, from the hall to the small wedding flowers, were all lovely and fascinating. She thought that her apprentice finally got down to work and was delighted in her heart. She did expect to learn from Wu Qianyin that Fan Qianshi had not been taking care of all these things like he was supposed to do. He was drunk every single day and would usually go out and not come back for a few days. Even when he returned, he would sleep for a day or two. When Gu Shijio went to the Tianyin Valley, Fan Qianshi was out drinking again, so she could not find him. It was then that she learned that all the arrangements in the Tianyin Valley were by Di Fui. Gu Shiji pondered for a moment and felt that it was only appropriate that she should meet him and thank him for everything he did. So she used the directed audio spell to connect with Di Fui. And now, here they were in front of each other for the first time since the incident in the Devil Kingdom. When Di Fui questioned her, she looked at him with her bright but ruthless eyes. "Fui, I had to deal with a few private matters. I don't need to report everything I do to you, right?" She probably felt that she was too ruthless, so she frowned and added, "You should know that this wedding is just a cover-up. It is not an actual celebration of love. You don't need to make it too luxurious." The glass in Di Fui's palm was spinning as he suddenly asked, Gio, are you still angry with me?" Gu Shijio looked puzzled. Di Fui took a deep breath and reminded her, "That night when I was with the young princess." Gu Shijio laughed and quickly interrupted him. You were talking about that incident. Rest assured, I know that you were trying to influence her father, Meng Lianxing, so you deliberately pretended to be good to her. I will not be angry about that." Di Fui's facial expression changed slightly. He wanted to add something, but in the end, it became a question, "Not angry at all?" Gu Shijio raised her eyebrows. "Of course, this kind of thing is very common. What is there to be angry about? The trick you used had been used by Yin Jusi on Meng Liuxiang before. It was just a matter of expediency. I understood it at the time, so I didn't bother." Di Fui was choked, but suddenly he laughed. "Divine Lord is being really understanding now. However, why did you ask to cancel our engagement that day?" "I was afraid of delaying you." "Then, why do you want to marry me now?" His questions were getting sharper and sharper. Gu Shijio frowned slightly and sighed. "That was because of the situation. I couldn't deny it in front of Qianshi. I am sorry." She finally felt apologetic as she looked at him. "I know that it is challenging for you to tolerate me. So why don't we do this? After the wedding, I will try to arrange for a divorce and will not delay you for too long. In the meantime, if you have another sweetheart, you can date her quietly. I will close one eye and not interfere with you." After 3 years, you can officially marry again. Chapter 29:15. The wedding Di Fui was appalled by her response. He lifted his sleeve off the table and got ready to leave. You are really trying your best for your apprentice. Divine Lord, please rest assured, I admire your open-mindedness, and I intend to put it into practice. Then, he turned away and left. Gu Shijio sat in the same place and looked down at the wine in the cup. She slowly put it near to her lips and drank it. As she took a gulp, she was choked and coughed repeatedly for a moment. When the coughing finally stopped, she suddenly felt that the originally mellow wine in her glass had suddenly become bitter. It made her chest a little stuffy, and she no longer wanted to drink it. The wedding ceremony of the god of creation was naturally the center of attention of the entire world. There were full attendance and representation from the officials of all 6 realms. The vast Tianyin Valley was quite full of people on this day. Fortunately, the steward who Di Fui chose to manage all of these matters was a competent person. This person was not only hardworking, but also versatile. There were so many guests and so many chores that needed to be sorted, but he could arrange it in a fast and orderly manner. All the people did their jobs well, and there was no chaos at all. Gu Shijio had some time on her hands, so she simply meditated for 2 days and only came out 1 day before the wedding. Wu Qinyin reported to her and said that National Master Di had sent a wedding dress and asked her to give it a try. In her lifetime, Gu Shijio had never expected that she would wear a wedding dress one day. The wedding dress was very costly as it was sewed by the most famous embroiders in the 6 realms using the best silk satin. It took them 10 days without any sleep to finish this dress. There were a few phoenixes on the wedding dress that danced and looked like they were alive. She donned the dress piece by piece on her body, and then wore the phoenix crown with a pearl on her hair. She looked into the mirror, and the flaming red color of her dress reflected on her slightly pale face with a blush. The swaying tassels made her pretty face look like a peach blossom. Read more chapter on VIP novel. The entire wedding dress was gorgeous, and Gu Shiju let out a sigh of relief as she sorted out her eyelashes with a curler. Every girl had a dream wedding dress in their heart, and Gu Shijio was no exception. Nevertheless, she did not even know what she liked until this moment. Even though all of it was just a show, in the end, it actually fulfilled a dream of hers. She spun around, and the wedding dress fluttered perfectly with the movements of her body. She felt delighted with this wedding dress, and then turned to ask Wu Qinyan behind her, "Qinyan, how do you feel?" Wu Qinyan was a little worried to the point where she did not even hear Gu Shijio speak. Gu Shijio had to ask her again before her mind was brought back into the room. She smiled and replied, "It is nice. You look stunning wearing this dress. You will be the most beautiful bride in the world tomorrow." Gu Shijio was satisfied with that answer. She straightened the coronet on her head and casually asked, "Where is Qianshi?" Wu Qinyan was stunned by the question. She answered, "He is out. Hasn't come back yet." Gu Zijia frowned. This child has not been sensible recently. Wu Qinyan subconsciously tried to cover for him. He should be out to buy the items needed for the wedding. That's good. Fortunately, he is not that insensible after all. Wu Qinyan looked down to the ground and sighed. Gu Shijio found Fan Qianshi in the underground cellar of a restaurant. He was drunk and had stolen a dozen of excellent wines hidden in the house. He was lying on the ground and sleeping when she found him. The air was filled with the smell of alcohol as he murmured something in his dream. "Master, what?" Chapter 29:16. The wedding too. Am I not good enough? I like you so much. His clean clothes were full of dirt at the moment, and he looked like a lonely tramp. Gu Shiju looked down at him, and there was clear pain at the bottom of her eyes. After all, she taught him for so many years, so seeing him like this would inevitably affect her. She would be lying if she said she was not distressed. However, she should not give him any hope. She had to be cruel to free him of his unrequited love so that he could ultimately come back to his senses. The pain he was going through was something that he needed to experience. Otherwise, he would never let go. Under normal circumstances, a person suffering from unrequited love would turn their attention to their career. As for Fan Qianshi, she believed that his focus would soon shift to his practice. With that in mind, Gu Shizhou turned and was about to teleport away, but the door of the wine cellar was suddenly opened, and 3 people sneaked in. These 3 people were dressed like the shopkeepers of the cellar. They saw Fan Qianshi and were furious and shocked. "No wonder our stock has been missing. We have a thief. Hit him! Hit him! Hit this little thief!" The 3 men picked up 3 wooden sticks and smashed Fan Qianshi's face. Meanwhile, Fan Qianshi was so drunk that he simply could not defend himself. He got hit a few times on his face to the point where it turned reddish. Gu Shizhou frowned. She pulled her fingers together as though she was about to do something, but in the end, she held herself back. It was good for him to face the consequences of his actions since he had stolen a lot of wine from the shop. She should let him have a lesson. Anyway, Gu Shizhou thought that these people would throw him out after a few hits, but she did not expect that they would endlessly hit him with the sticks. She watched Fan Qianshi get whacked 30 to 40 times until his nose and face were obviously swollen. What was worse was that these people did not seem like they were going to stop. One of them even drew out a knife to cut him and feed him to the dog. This was clearly too much. Therefore, Gu Shizhou pinched a spell on her fingers and pointed at Fan Qianshi. There was a colorless and transparent cover that suddenly appeared over his body. The man with the knife did not see it went forward to cut Fan Qianshi's neck. However, as she attempted to cut Fan Qianshi, the invisible barrier responded, and he was thrown to the back of the room, almost cutting himself in the face. He was shocked and quickly threw away his knife. "There is a ghost." The invisible barrier also repelled the sticks that the other people had used to hit Fan Qianshi. Quickly, all of the people in the room grew suspicious. They looked at each other and did not dare to hit him again. Instead, they lifted Fan Qianshi and threw him into the mud on the street. When they went back to the wine cellar and counted the jars, they accidentally found a few silvers on the ground, enough to pay for the wine stolen by Fan Qianshi. They groaned and picked up the silvers, and later regretted what they did to the man. It seemed that this drunk man was not trying to eat a free meal. He had left a few pieces of silver coins as payment. The wind on the street was bleak, and Fan Qianshi was lying in leeches. He had no intention to wake up. He was aware of the pain on his body and face despite his drunken state. He spoke softly, "Master, don't abandon me. Master, even if you hit me, please don't leave me. Master, I am hurt." Gu Zijia's fingers were trembling slightly at this point. She was angry, but also felt sorry for the poor guy. Soon, a group of people around the street circled him and pointed at him. Someone actually recognized him. "Hey, is he the principal disciple of the Divine Lord of the Tianyin Valley?" Gu Shizhou was speechless. No matter how angry she was, she still did not want her apprentice to lose his face here. But just when she was about to remove him secretly, there was a gust of wind around the grounds. Chapter 29:17, The Wedding 3. The flat ground suddenly burst into a gust of wind, to the point where the crowd could hardly open their eyes and mouths. When the strong winds had passed, Fan Qianshi, who was on the ground, had disappeared. Everyone was speechless except Gu Shizhou, who was relieved. She recognized that Wu Qianyin caused the gust of wind. It seemed that she arrived in time to save him. Fan Qianshi did not return that night, and Wu Qianyin was nowhere to be seen either. Gu Shizhou initially thought that Wu Qianyin would bring the drunken Fan Qianshi back home. After all, tomorrow was her wedding day, and he was her only apprentice. It would not be appropriate if he did not show up. Furthermore, since Wu Qianyin had a good pair of hands, Gu Shizhou expected her to help as she dressed up tomorrow for the big event. Wu Qianyin had always been a sensible person, and she had no reason not to come back. However, as the sky grew brighter, the 2 people still did not show up. This made Gu Zijia's heart a little uneasy. She wondered what had happened to the 2 of them. Nevertheless, with their abilities, it was difficult for anyone in this world to challenge them. so they probably did not encounter any trouble. Perhaps Wu Qinyan saw that Fan Qianshi was so drunk that she did not dare to bring him back, so she stayed outside with him and took care of him. But even though Wu Qinyan did not come back last night, she still needed to get dressed for today. Therefore, she should be back soon, right? Fortunately for Gu Shijiu, the matron of honor who was sent by Di Fui could help Gu Shijiu get dressed. Quickly, she put makeup on Gu Shijiu to get her ready for the wedding. The method that the matron had used definitely caused some pain to Gu Zijia's face. Nonetheless, she was born with natural beauty, so even though she was getting married, she only needed to put on a layer of thin powder. When all was done, Gu Shijiu looked at herself in the mirror. She had a pair of beautiful eyes, a reddish face, and fair skin. When the flaming tassel was floating in front of her, it made her feel a bit strange. Although she felt that she looked very pretty, she knew that it was all fake. She stopped for a moment to imagine how it would feel if it were true, but then laughed at herself for thinking so. How could it be true? Both she and Di Fui had their own agenda. This was simply a mutually beneficial situation. While still occupied in her thoughts, the matron of honor whispered to her, "Divine Lord, should you set off to pick up the groom now?" Gu Shijiu was stunned for a moment. She just remembered that Di Fui would be married in her house this time, so she needed to pick him up personally. Quickly, she got up and strode out. Let's go. It was common to marry a bride, but it was rare to see a bride marry the groom, not to mention that it was the Divine Lord who married a husband. Therefore, at this time, it was not only her house that was full of guests, but also along the streets all the way to the Tianqing Palace, where Di Fui stayed. The streets were filled with people who wanted to watch it live. The team to pick up the groom marched on the street as the firecrackers were set off, and the music was played. Gu Shijiu opted not to take the sedan chair, but sat in a large, luxurious car. After they reached the groom, he would sit together with her in the car. She opened the curtain and looked outside of the car as it was traveling to Di Fui. Around 600 people were traveling with her to his place. This made the marching on the street look very grand, as they were surrounded by people who admired the Divine Lord. Nonetheless, there were also a few inharmonious sounds that occasionally chimed in. I didn't expect the National Master to marry the Divine Lord. It seems as if he is trying to exploit the power of the Divine Lord, which is why he compromised for this kind of marriage. You are right. The National Master is a very proud man. There are a lot of powerful ladies who want to marry him, but he never even gave them a chance. Now, he's going to marry to the Divine Lord so openly. Perhaps this was the condition set by Divine Lord to marry him. Chapter 29:18, The Wedding 4. Nevertheless, if the National Master did not benefit from it, he surely wouldn't agree to it. A real man should not openly attach themselves to just one woman. The Divine Lord is the god of the 6 realms. If she were to get attached, she would surely marry a husband. Anyway, this is also good for us. As the husband of Divine Lord, no one would dare to provoke National Master D anymore. His identity is more honorable now, and it is just a matter of time for him to rule the 6 realms. A man can always be flexible. It doesn't matter to compromise a little bit to achieve a bigger goal. TSK. After all his efforts, it seems that the National Master is going to rely on his wife's status. As you said, it is not that noble. I will never do this if it happened to me. I would rather have nothing in my life than to have to rely on my wife for my success. I would rather get an obedient wife and a few more beautiful concubines. That is my greatest joy of life. Chill. Lower down your voice, please. This is Divine Lord. She is different from other women. These people's voices were not very high, but Gu Shijiu was very good at hearing, and naturally, she heard all of their conversations. She frowned slightly when someone alerted them to it. Then, her fingertips moved, and a touch of pale light emerged from the car. Those people who were gossiping suddenly felt an itch on their throats, and soon they realized that they could not open their mouth or even utter a word. They were certainly shocked by the itchiness and discomfort. It was so bad to the point where they felt like pulling their tongues out to scratch their throats. Even then, their mouth could not be opened and was tightly sealed. All of them looked rather crazy trying to figure out how to open their mouth and scratch the inside of their throat. The people in the crowd thought they were mad, so they stayed far away from them. This little chaos naturally did not affect the team at all. They were still moving forward to Di Fuyi's house. Gu Shijio put her hand back down inside the vehicle. These people would feel the itch for 3 days and would not be able to sleep, drink, or eat during that time. It was just a small punishment for them, so that they would learn their lesson. She did not treat these people's words as an insult to her, but she definitely reflected on what they said. Suddenly, she realized that Di Fuyi paid a higher price for this show. He actually did not need to get married to her, and he could still rule the 6 realms on his own. It was just a matter of time. However, because of the wedding, he was being described as a man who relied on his wife. This reputation might never disappear in his lifetime. If she knew this earlier, it seemed that she was not considered enough in their arrangement. She had to try to remedy it in the future. Soon, Gu Shijio and her team arrived at the front of the Tianqing Palace. Compared with the lively atmosphere in the Tianyin Valley, this place was quite deserted. The door was closed, and only 2 or 3 doormen guarded the entrance. There were some worries in Gu Zijia's heart when she saw the scene. Over the past few days, Di Fuyi was definitely mad with her, and she did not contact him to sort out the issues they had. Would he regret getting married to her now? She got out of the car, and the doorman greeted and saluted her. "Divine Lord, where is your master?" "Master, master, Divine Lord, please come in first. My master will come out soon." Gu Shiju secretly heaved a sigh of relief. As long as he was in the house and did not escape from the wedding, it was all right. She left the team outside as she stepped into the palace. It was the first time she entered the Tianqing Palace. She found the decorations inside quite festive with a big red double happiness word hung inside. Red silks were hung everywhere as a sign of prosperity. Gu Shijio was taken into the main hall by the housekeeper in the house. This hall had been elegantly arranged. A peony flower shaped in the word "she" was hung in the middle with red pearls hanging on the ceiling. The decoration was flawless and powerful. Di Fuyi actually did it himself. Apparently, the arrangement here was more interesting than in the Tianyin Valley. Chapter 2919, The Wedding 5, Gu Shijio could not help but explore the place again. All of a sudden, she felt that she preferred the layout here. Seeming impressed by the design, she thought that it would be nice for her to wait for Di Fuyi here, so she did not expect the butler to just take her here and then turn around and bring her to the back of the palace. The rest of the interior of the palace was also decorated with the same luxury, which made Gu Shijio have a feeling that this was the actual wedding room. Although Gu Shijio did not know the custom procedure of the wedding, when a family had a daughter who was getting married, the groom's house would be decorated nicely while the bride's place would only have a sticker on the door. Nonetheless, today's situation was different. So should Di Fuyi's home look simpler than hers? She had not heard about a situation where there were decorations on both sides. Today was probably the one and only time. The layout of his wedding room was as good as the wedding room at the Tianyin Valley and even transcended her place. When she came in, Di Fuyi was sitting at the table with a pot of wine and 2 cups in front of him. He was still dressed in his usual home attire. His elegant purple robes accentuated his handsome face. How was the layout of this wedding room? Di Fuyi asked her. "Very good. It's very beautiful," Gu Shijio praised. "Do you like it?" "Yes." Gu Shijio couldn't help but ask, but the outside looked sorrowful and lacking festivity. The door was closed, so I thought you would change your mind about the wedding. Di Fuyi looked at her and smiled. "How come? I have been looking forward to this moment for a long time." Gu Shijio breathed a sigh of relief and smiled. "I knew I could count on you." She looked around again before continuing. "Since you're going to my place, even though you decorated this room so nicely, it won't be used." Di Fuyi smiled. "Do you mean to say that I will always live with you? Are you not afraid that it will make it real? Are you really planning to sleep with me tonight?" Di Fuyi asked in a teasing manner. Gu Zijia's heart pumped faster after listening to the last question, and her face slightly reddened. She cleared her throat before replying. "You must be joking." Di Fuyi's smile faded quickly. Yeah, I was just joking. We are only putting on a show. So, after the wedding, we will sleep separately. Gu Shijio felt slightly apologetic in her heart, but she could not say anything else. So instead, she tried to change the topic. Your wedding room is very well decorated. When you are married to your lover, you can arrange it this way. Difui clasped his fingers on the glass tightly and smiled. You're right. I will definitely do my best for my lover. In the future, I will give her a grand wedding, and she will be happily married in my house so that everyone in the world would know that she is my wife. He seemed to think of something while speaking and raised his hand to present a stack of clothes to Gu Shijio, which he placed on his palm. Gu Zijia's eyes narrowed slightly to focus on the attire. This was another wedding gown. This wedding gown was carefully prepared for my lover. Come, Divine Lord, please help me to take a look at it. Gu Shijio was speechless. She subconsciously looked at the gown and finally understood why people usually tried not to compare. Though the dress that she wore was already very beautiful, when it was compared with this set in front of her, they were as different as heaven and earth. The main difference was that this set was woven with mermaid silk. The silk was condensed with a unique method requiring sunlight and cost $1 million for every inch produced. There was simply no price for this dress at all in the market. Chapter 29:20 The Wedding 6, not to mention the gown, was also embedded with numerous valuable gems. These gems seemed to be glowing and formed a starry sky pattern around the dress. The piece of luxury was exquisite and majestic, to say the least. These gems above were naturally very exclusive. Perhaps even one piece was enough to buy over a city. Additionally, the mermaid silk was fine and delicate, which made her feel like she was holding a dim moon in her hand. If she wore it on her body, she was sure that it would be very smooth and comfortable. Gu Shijio was very knowledgeable, so she could roughly estimate that the production of this costume would take at least 20 years. It was not something that the dress she currently wore could ever compare with. She could not help but wonder who would wear this wedding gown in the future. Would the woman who wears this dress be happy? Unfortunately, she could not see it. Later, she suddenly felt that the wedding gown on her body was a little uncomfortable, and her heart ached a little. So, what is your opinion on this dress? Difui looked at her as he asked. It seems very premium, elegant, and beautiful. Gu Shijio threw all the words she could think of to describe the wedding gown on the table, but she refused to touch it again as it would only make her feel worse. Fortunately for her, Difui kept the dress away and did not showcase it anymore to aggravate her discomfort. Then, Gu Shijio looked at the hourglass and urged him, "We are not exactly early. Are you ready to go? Are you going to get changed? Do you want me to put on a wedding attire?" Of course. It was too casual if he wore his home attire for a wedding. What's more, the man was the groom. Okay, then you can help me wear it? Please help me put it on. Difui spoke calmly. Gu Shijio was undoubtedly stunned by his request, but she recalled that Difui had given up a lot for her with this arrangement, so she agreed to help him just this once. The style of Difui's gown was rather simple. It was mostly red and embroidered with the pattern of a dragon. This actually made his outfit look rather matching with the dress that she was wearing now. As Gu Shijio prepared to help him, she could not help but ask a question. You must have also prepared a wedding attire that matches that starry gown, right? How does it look like? Difui did not look back at her as he replied, Of course. However, there's no need to show it to you now. Gu Shijio was choked by his reply, but did not know how to refute it. Anyway, she should not be too pushy with him now, since he was doing her a big favor. If he did not want to show it, then that was his call. If he wanted to show it to her in the future, perhaps she might not even want to look at it when the time came. While she was pondering these thoughts, Difui had already taken off his robes. Since she was occupied in her thoughts, when Gu Shijio looked at him, he was only left with a pair of trousers. The proportions of his body were incredibly perfect. Anyone who glanced at it would inevitably be drawn to take a second look. In fact, Gu Shijio had already found herself watching him for the third time. Hold on. Stop. Gu Shijio abruptly moved her eyes away from the man's body before she continued. You don't have to take off everything, right? You just need to change your outer robe with the wedding suit. You don't even have to change your innerwear. If he continued to take off his clothes, he would be naked. Di Fui casually replied, even if it is just a show, I want to make it perfect. As a newlywed, the clothes should be new from my head to my toes. It would be more auspicious that way. He finally turned and looked at her this time when he spoke. Are you wearing any old pieces of clothing? This was not the case for Gu Shijio, as the matron of honor that Di Fui had sent her was fully prepared. Even her innerwear was new. In fact, Gu Shijio had no problem with him wearing a full set of new clothes, but she certainly objected to helping him change into each piece of clothing. Finally, after a round of bargaining, he wore his underwear and trousers himself, and she was only responsible for putting on his robe for him. At first, Gu Shijio thought that wearing a robe would look too simple, but when she had put it on him, she found that her assumption was untrue. Chapter 29-21 The Wedding 7 Although his robe looked simple, it was a bit troublesome to wear. This was especially true for the belt, as she needed to buckle it around his waist. Your belt is abnormal. Di Fui smiled. I've always wanted to be unique, so the belt is naturally an extraordinary one. Then, he raised his arms and waited for her to buckle his belt. Gu Shijio stared at his back for a moment and was caught in a daze. She did not know why, but she suddenly recalled his uncovered back that she had just inadvertently seen. Her heart seemed to have skipped half a beat, but just then she quickly circled his around his waist and buckled his belt. As she was standing very close to him, she could smell that his body exuded a unique fragrance. Furthermore, when she wrapped her hand around him to put on his belt, she could feel his fine and smooth muscle lines. Her heart had subconsciously skipped half a beat all of a sudden. Despite these strange feelings, she felt that her heart seemed to have a very powerful regulating function that could counter all the sudden changes. It only took a split second for things to return to normal for her. Di Fui had quietly closed his eyes slightly to try to sense any irregularities in her heartbeat. From his observations, her heart was loud and clear, but there was no sign of it beating irregularly. His fingers clenched slightly in his sleeves at the discovery, and once again, he felt extremely disappointed. She was indifferent to his charm and appeal. Was her heart made of iron? Was the god of creation born with no desire for lust? Was she only allowed to be ruthless? He felt helpless, as if he were flirting with a blind man. Perhaps all of his efforts were going to be wasted. For the first time in his life, he had the thought of giving up. While occupied in his thoughts, Di Fui failed to realize 5 delicate fingers were waving in front of him. Hello. He quickly regained his focus and gave his undivided attention to the person in front of him. But when he looked at her, his heart seemed to be one pumping irregularly. Anyway, she had put on his wedding attire as agreed, so he grasped her hand and pulled her away. Let's go. Otherwise, we will be late. Gu Shijio was speechless. It was him who had delayed them in the first place, but now, he was the one rushing them. She subconsciously wanted to withdraw her hand from his grip, but he held her tightly and said something in a serious tone. According to tradition, you should be the one who carries me to the car. Are you carrying me, or should I carry you? Gu Shijio remained silent for a moment, but finally agreed on a solution. Let's just hold hands. Thus, the two of them appeared in front of the public, hand in hand. The people outside had been waiting nervously, hoping that the grooms did not regret his rescission and run away. They were so relieved to see that the couple emerged in such a loving fashion. Before they arrived at the door of the sedan, Di Fui swiftly picked her up from the ground. Gu Shijio was so shocked by his sudden move to the point where she subconsciously hugged his neck. Amazed by the show, the people around could not help but scream and cheer for the lovely couple. It should be the groom who carries the bride into the sedan. However, as we're getting married in your house, the roles were reserved. Nevertheless, since you don't want to carry me, it is appropriate for me to carry you. The rules can't be abolished. Di Fui sent her a directed audio and stopped her from struggling or attacking him. One of the tips off her fingers was still pointing at a vital part of his neck. Obviously, This was her instinctive reaction to his sudden action. But when she finally heard his explanation, Gushijio finally put her finger at ease. She could not help but wonder why there were so many rules. Nonetheless, she was not one who hated customs and traditions. The team finally got back to work, and the flower girls in front of the vehicle were glittering flower petals along the open road. Behind them were guards and a drummer that was playing his instrument. The place was crowded and joyful, with people on both sides of the street smiling and cheering them on. Gushijio and Difui sat side by side in the car. There was only one row of seats in the sedan that could only fit 2 people. Although Gushijio had touched him before, at the moment, she was sitting a bit too close to him for comfort and felt that it was inappropriate. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.